What's up, Internet? You're tuning in to episode 72 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where three best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Peter Messi, joined as always by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
And Mr. Max Wright.
Hello, hello. Sorry, I really fumbled on that one.
You just copied Steve. That's all you got?
Yeah. That's what I've got in my chambers today.
You didn't even rip off one of the other people. Okay.
Looking at my homework.
Yeah, Max is that guy.
His list is going to be the exact same as mine as well, isn't it? You've hacked into my notes and you found
can you
it.
Resend me that as well, Steve.
Yeah, sure.
Steve, I just want to be clear. As a former college professor, by sharing your notes, you're just as liable. So you're gonna have to prove that Max stole from you.
He definitely did. He hacked in.
You did what, Steve?
I did what?
You were as a what?
I was a college
Me,
professor.
Pete's the college professor, not me.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. That's we'll talk about that on one more thing, okay? we got a big show ahead of you, all right? It's the first episode of the year, which means the time has come. It's Game of the Year, the episode that we look forward to all year. And I am so hyped to get into this one after the break. We've been off for a weekend change. So I don't know about y'all, but I mean, Max and I, we got into it on Nintendo Noise yesterday. So the rust's off a little bit, but I'm chomping at the bit for this episode. So I'm ready to go here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I've got a great list. I'm excited with some of the entries. I'm excited to argue the toss over what comes first, as we always do. Great.
All right, so
can I quickly just do what I've been doing quite a lot this year so far, as in twice. I believe it's champing in the bit, not chomping.
It is champing. At the bit.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry.
I didn't want to say anything, and I only know that because of the TV show Billions. So definitely watch that. It's worth watching.
Max, it's interesting. We're only 2 minutes into the show, and you've already used your handbrake. So I'm gonna keep that in mind. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Well actually is already here.
Yeah, this guy. I invite him onto my show, and he actually's me before I even get through the damn intro.
Watch me correct myself like half an hour in as well, like I did in Nintendo Noise, just for I go actually for myself.
So, if you guys have not joined us for a Game of the Year episode in the past, I'll give you a quick breakdown of what we're going to do here. So, each of us has made an individual list of our top 10 games of the year, and then we are going to go through our individual rankings. We'll go through kind of round robin style, right? And we also have a list of honorable mentions, and then we have a new category that we've never done before, which was games that were new to me in 2022. It'll be better next year because it'll rhyme. But, Steve, I think, always has been an advocate for the idea that, there are lots of games that might come to a new platform that then you pick them up on, right? There's always a couple of those games that, you catch, at the end of, from the previous year you get early on or something like that whenever there's a quiet period. And, we thought it'll be fun to highlight one of those or a couple of those games as well. So I'm ready to just jump into it here. Because like I said, we've got long lists to get through. So we'll start with everybody's number 10. I'm going to go first. So my number 10 is As Dusk Falls. So this is a game that y'all might remember from, it was featured during a couple of Xbox presentations, and it came to Game Pass day and date. And it is a game by... you know what, Steve, actually, real quick, while I'm pontificating, can you look up the name of the developer for me? But I know that the studio head is...
Interior Night.
Thank you. Interior Night. And they have some folks who have a lineage from...
Quantic Dream.
Yeah, Quantic Dream. Thank you. I was about to say, I'm like, Detroit. Yeah, there you go. So it's that style of game, right? It's the, kind of choose your own adventure, pick the story beats and then see how your actions ripple out type story. And if you were someone who played Detroit or was, at least even familiar with the gameplay of Detroit Become Human, it has that same cascading storyline at the end of every chapter where it shows every decision that you made and all of the different decisions that you could have made are blacked out, right? So it's kind of encouraging you to go through and have multiple playthroughs and try to play your cards in different ways or side with different characters and kind of get into the role playing of the characters that you're getting to control. And it does a really, really good job of playing with like time in an interesting way and having the cast of characters stories play out over, multiple, I don't want to say multiple decades, but it's quite a bit of time, right? And this was that game that had that kind of, it's almost like a motion comic, if you've ever seen one of those, where it has like a hand-drawn kind of, comic book graphic novel style, and it's very, very limited animation for the characters, and like the environments are kind of like sometimes 3D backdrops, sometimes,
Kind of reminded me of the cutscenes in Bayonetta 1, where no one really talks and it kind of like layers over the top. I had such a visceral reaction to this art style when it was revealed. I hated it, absolutely hated it. I've played a little bit of this game, still not really gelled with me.
Not coming back, no?
And like the controls were like, every single time I don't, maybe it was because I was playing it and streaming it from my Xbox and streaming it to my Steam Deck, but it kept like referencing touchscreens, and I was like, what is going on with the controls? Like, why does it keep talking about touchscreens all the time? It's very weird.
It is, you can play it on handheld or mobile as well. So I believe it could have just been that you confused it, I guess, that way. Because like you can download an app and control it that way, and they kind of encourage you to do the whole like Until Dawn, super massive game style thing of like have a bunch of players, then you guys can like vote on which action you want to take, or you can.
Can people actually do that with the app? Like, can multiple people interact, or you pass it around, kind of thing?
My understanding, because I only played it single player, but the way that it looked like it was that like everybody would get to vote, and whichever choice got the most votes would be the one. That
would be really
through.
cool with like on like a Twitch stream as well.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it ended up surprising me because I don't know, I didn't have as immediately a negative reaction to the art style as you, but it was definitely something that I was kind of like, I don't know about this. Like, I could see this working if the story is good enough, or if it plays well enough. And it ended up working for me, and I felt like the more I played it, the more acclimated to the style that I felt, and I felt myself kind of doing the, I don't know. It was very similar to like the experience of reading a comic for me, right? Of like how you get a sense of motion and action and emotion and all those things, and kind of being able to fill in the blanks for yourself for like the moments that are shown and the moments that are not shown, and yeah, and I ended up really digging it, and I kind of kicked it on as a whim over break because I had a couple weeks where I was like, all right, I want to jump on a bunch of the indies that I didn't get to, that I had heard were of quality and that I knew spoke to my taste. And everyone knows I love the choose your own adventure style games, especially when player choice has a really big impact on the outcome, and this game definitely has that, where every choice that you make has pretty serious ramifications. And yeah, and I found it to be really, really satisfying, and it's not a super long experience either. So it's one that I think there are some other games on my list that I would very much like to replay, but I think their length makes it a little bit just unlikely, right? That it's like the same way I feel about Disco Elysium. I would love to play that game again and roll a different character, but it's like a 40-hour game, right? Whereas like As Dusk Falls is something you could get through in a week.
On that, though.
Sorry?
You could skip through a lot of dialogue on Disco because you know what it is.
Yeah, but to me, it's like, if you're doing that, then it's like, why are you playing the game? Like, that's the gameplay.
Experience it properly.
Yeah.
I've not actually seen this game. I've seen the sort of the cover. I've never actually seen the art style. It looks nice to me when it's still, but in my head when it's moving, it sort of does it look like Angela Anaconda, or like when yeah, well, you know what I'm talking. Angela Anaconda, do you remember that? Where it's
I know what you're talking about. It's not like that, because it's not.
Like when
it's
Mel Gibson's in South Park.
it's
and
not
it's
like
it's
limited animation, right? Like it's more like
like when you unlock
say
the
we were
3D
say
in
there's two
Marvel
characters
Snap.
having a conversation, right?
Yeah.
Rather than having like here's this character being animated who's talking, it's like one or two drawings of that character. It's like more like visual novel-y, right? Or like something like the way that like in like Persona 5 or something like that, where like characters will talk and it's like a character image will, or like Fire Emblem or something like that, and the character image jumps up and
Okay. Yeah. Like it'll swap. So as they're saying, they'll sort of change their pose, and then they'll change their pose, but they're talking the whole time.
So it's a lot more like looking at, like I said, like it's like looking at a comic book, right? And like looking at things like frame by frame rather than like there being, like more traditional animation.
Yeah, I
nice.
do wish there was more traditional animation though, because I think that would have engaged a lot more people with this game. I don't think for me the art style landed. But I'm glad it made your list. I'm glad it made one of our lists because I do think the title has a lot going for it.
I think where I landed on it is I think if this art style is the creative choice they made to allow them to have more branching paths and more like legitimate change within the narrative from chapter to chapter, then that's a worthwhile trade in my book.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely a good one. I'm glad I played it because it definitely was one I only played like last week and it snuck on the list. So it bumped a couple other games that I thought were locks. So very, very stoked about that.
Good stuff. So that's currently our number one game of the year.
Game of the year.
Currently.
Yeah, with 1 point.
1 point. Here we go. Shall I pop in with my number 10?
All right, Max. Yeah, what's number 10 for you?
My number 10 for the year is Scorn.
Okay.
Which I don't know if you guys remember the sort of
Yeah,
HR
the
Geiger.
disgusting game.
Yeah, HR Geiger inspired sort of like techno. There's a word for not techno horror, but it's like a an alien sort of body horror kind of game. It wasn't exactly what I thought it would be, but that didn't stop me from enjoying it the same way. I thought it was going to be more combat heavy or more exploration heavy, but it really was sort of like there was some puzzles and there was some sort of light exploration, but it was really all about sort of working out how to manipulate these disgusting contraptions. You put your hand into something and then you're like, okay, I'm moving this object, but I don't quite know what the objective is, and then you go, oh, okay, I'm doing this, I'm moving this, and it doesn't really give you a ton of text, but when you shove your hand into something and it grips you, or it sort of like puts something inside you or whatever, you then have to work out what it is that's doing or what your objective is. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was quite good. I liked I'm using quite in the American way there, not the English way. And I think the art style is one of the best looking games. I think I said this on our Game Awards show where I thought it deserved to win sort of like one of the best designed like worlds of the year because it's really unique. And I even
Was this one up for art direction? I don't think it was it?
I think it was, yeah, because I'm pretty sure I voted for it.
That might have been the only category it was in. Yeah, you could be right.
I don't think it deserves much.
I think
else,
Elden Ring picked that one up.
Yeah, which I'm not going to get into that. But that's my number 10. I enjoyed it enough. Just to preface, I didn't play like 15 games or 20 games from this year or whatever. So I'm not like struggling for this. Like this comes quite low on all the games I played from this year, but I still enjoyed it enough to recommend it, I guess. Especially on Game Pass where it's not long. It's about 5 hours long. So on Game Pass you'll be able to just sort of chomp through it in a couple of days, maybe.
Maybe champ through it.
Or you could champ through it. Go on, Steve.
My number 10 is a game that technically came out last year, but I'm putting it on the list anyway because I like it.
Well, hang on.
You're not allowed to do that. We had a whole
everyone
thing.
played it this year. It became popular December 2021. But everyone played it this year, including myself. I was obsessed with it. I had a very, very long streak with it. And that is Wordle. and I don't think many people will really remember the Wordle
I'm
from
okay
the
with this.
beginning of
I'm okay with this.
last year.
Sky.
Everyone was obsessed with it. It got bought by the New York Times. It was a huge phenomenon, and made one person very, very rich. And I loved Wordle. I remember texting my mum about Wordle. Like we would be like, oh, she'd be like, oh, have you got the Wordle for today? I got it in 2. And I'd be like, how the hell did you get it in 2? Like, there was like strategy involved of like picking a word that had like loads of letters, different letters in that you could like kind of do it. There was like theory videos going around on YouTube about like someone who'd done like all the math and the number crunching to figure out what the best starter
Yeah.
word for Wordle was. And I think this was one of the best mobile games of 2022.
Yeah, you're right.
ridiculous.
No,
Like,
he's right. He
no,
is
the
right.
game itself is a fine choice, but it did not come out this year. And we have a whole other category about games that you're ridiculous. You broke
okay
your
with
own
this.
rule.
I used to spend, now you've mentioned it, I used to spend sort of, I'd start my day by doing every variation of Wordle, you know, Worldle, Quordle, Moviedle, Postedle, all of the different variations. I would do them all. And then when that took like 2 hours of my day, I was like, cool, time to start doing some work. In fact, actually, I thinking about it, when I first started speaking to my now girlfriend again, after sort of like hadn't spoke to her for sort of 5 or 6 years, we hopped on a Zoom call and we played the sort of the Wordle where you can set the length to any length you want. So we were doing
Yeah.
like a 9-word. We spent like 3 hours on like a nine-letter Wordle.
And when was that, Max? It was
Um,
last year, right? Not
It
the
was
year before. 'Cause
January. It
no
was
one was playing this in
January.
2021
Yeah, it
because
was January 7th.
yeah, because he added the support for sharing with emojis
Not
at like the last
relevant.
week of December.
Not relevant.
Very relevant.
It was
Fine with
out.
it. Fine with it.
It was like in early access, if you want to call it that. When the New York Times bought it, it went 1.0.
Okay, now it was early
You see?
access. Sure. You're full of it. All right, fine. My number 9 is a game that actually came out this year, and it's Kirby and the Forgotten Land. So
Oh, yeah.
we've talked about this game quite a bit on Nintendo Noise recently, because I think notably, right, like this this was a year that we at least I think spent less time on Nintendo Switch. And this was one of the few games that really grabbed my attention and warranted me spending a lot of time on the platform. And I beat it. I got pretty deep into the post game extra levels, and planned on 100%ing it, but ended up getting distracted by the Steam Deck when that dropped. But if not for that, I think this is a game that I probably would have put easily another 5-6 hours cleaning up what was left in it, because I did spend a lot of time in it and like went out of my way to find all the collectibles, and I was finding all the Waddle Dees, and I think this game feels like a really good step forward for Kirby, which is a franchise that I think has a lot of great entries and a lot of games that I really enjoy, but I think it's kind of been in a rut for a while where it's kind of been in this pattern of just like, what's the next gimmick, and creating another game that feels like it's chasing something that we've seen before, right? Whereas this, I think, the like 2.5D kind of like change in perspective, right? Having it be a little bit more behind camera, things like that. Were definitely things that freshened things up. But even beyond that, there was Max here grabbing his Kirby hat. There was also a lot of, I think, freshness in the design, and like the style and the worlds feeling different and new, and there being like the town element, that you could kind of come back to, and not necessarily all new stuff, but like kind of recontextualizing old things, right? Like having boss rushes and mini games and things like that have kind of always been a part of the Kirby DNA, and then kind of finding a way to take those and make them part of this fresh town mechanic. I think was just another example of how it didn't need to reinvent the wheel to make Kirby feel fresh again. And that was something that, as somebody who has definitely been kind of an on and off, right? A casual fan, however you want to describe it, right? Like there are plenty of Kirby games that I really vibe with, but there's plenty that I've, bounced off of or not played at all, because they just didn't feel like they warranted the same level of attention as some of Nintendo's other, more premier franchises. And I think this is the first time in a long time where Kirby's felt, you know, bigger than that, you know, and like it was something that everybody talked about for a minute, and that, you know, probably a lot of new folks gave a shake for the first time.
What a bounce back from Star Allies as well.
Yeah, right. Because that game, you know, I think is like a poster child for what I'm talking about, right? Where like it's not a bad game, but it's just very predictable and bland.
Say it's a bad game.
It's not. I mean, it's definitely not nearly as inspired or, you know, fresh as what Forgotten Land was able to do, you know, and not to mention the fact that like some of the boss battles are like more challenging than Kirby's been in, you know, who knows, like maybe ever, right? Which I think is great. Like up in that
Yeah,
skill
still
ceiling
not
limit.
crazy challenging. I probably wouldn't describe it as challenging
No.
at all. Like they are super easy, but it's not like some of the older Kirby games where it feels like you could just press forwards and finish.
That was the
level.
problem with Star Allies, right? Like
Yeah,
it's just too much, you know, and it's like it doesn't have to be difficult to be, you know, enjoyable, right? Like but it presents enough of a challenge where it's like oh, okay, like I have to think about this a little bit and like experiment with like which powers I vibe with the most and things like that, to give you something that feels a little bit more robust.
Yeah,
I'll get more into that in a little bit, but
a spoiler.
You're wrong about it being not too difficult because my God. But
oh yeah, some of the 3-star things were pretty tricky. You're right.
Well, not even necessarily that. I'm talking about like the final final boss of the game, the 100% final boss. Again, get to it later. But that was.
Is this the only Kirby game on both of your lists? Neither of you played Dream Buffet?
I played it.
Is that on your list?
It was fine.
No, it's not on my list.
I touched it. Can't say I remember it coming out. I'm gonna look at Google this one.
I didn't own it. I played it at a friend's place once and was like, I'm good.
It was their Fall Guys ripoff, Max. If
Oh God, yeah. No,
yeah.
I did not touch that.
I honestly
should
forgot
have been
I played
free
that
to
one.
play.
Was it not free to play?
No, it was not.
You pay £15 for the privilege to play that game.
It's on sale for £9.39. We're good. We're good. Right, I'm gonna go with my number 9 now.
Yeah.
Number 9 is Tinykin, which came out in August of this year. But I played it over the Christmas break. This, for those who don't know, I think it kind of went under the radar a little bit.
I heard about it, but yeah, I never got around to it.
Tinykin is a 3D platformer that combines like the classic sort of N64 collectathon style of gameplay with Pikmin, and also like a little bit of Toy Story thrown in there. The whole time I was playing this game,
Not enough Toy Story. Not enough.
It's
Toy
enough.
Story.
I was saying to our friend Chloe that Steve would really like this because it really reminds me of Toy Story, that she picks up and she beat it quicker than I did. But yeah, the whole time I was playing it, I was like, Steve would like this because it's just like Toy Story. You're a tiny little boy, and you're like talking to bugs. And as you go around these sort of big 3D levels, you pick up these things called Tinykin, which are essentially like Pikmin. You have like the red ones that blow things up. You have the I don't know, blue ones that electricity. You have the sort of greeny ones that make like a ladder. You have the purple ones that pick things up for you, you know, and you find them as you go around the level. You don't have to spend time growing them or they can't be killed or eaten or anything like that. But you do sort of like roam around the level, picking them up, and then you use them for their intended purpose. And then in each level, there's like a certain number of pollen to find. There's items to find. There's quests to complete when you speak to characters. And the whole thing was just like, it was just delightful. You know, sounded good. It looked really good. It's like a really good art style where the characters are all sort of 2D Paper Mario style 2D, where no matter what angle you're looking at them, they're always looking the same way. But the art, the actual world is all 3D. And it was just really sweet. Really, I think I got 100% in 7 hours. I think. So
you 100% in it. You got all the achievements as well.
I got
you found
every achievement.
all of them. Nice.
It's a good game, and I highly recommend it to anyone, and that's why it's my number 9.
Steve?
My number 9 is Signalis, which is a game I'm yet to finish, but I know it's on my list because I love this game. It mixes like lo-fi, also almost like pixel art style with also like 3D and classic Resident Evil gameplay where you have an inventory you have to manage and you play this
I
character
remember this. Okay.
who is like looking for someone, and she's an android and she works for a corporation, and it's just a really cool, compelling story, some weird like supernatural stuff in there that's kind of like Silent Hill vibes, but the core gameplay of it being like a classic Resident Evil game is just delightful. I had such a good time with what I've played of Signalis, and I'm looking forward to finishing it. I just took a break because there were so many other games I wanted to have a taster of before I did finish it. But I played this initially as part of the Steam Next Fest, the demo.
Mm.
And Asobi from the community actually told me about it and was like, "I think you'll like this game," and I did. I fell in love with it. It's a wonderful game with a good cast, a good lead character, and there's like a queer story arc in there as well, which is always nice. I had such a good time with Signalis, and I recommend it to anyone that likes the classic Resident Evil, and that is anything pre Resident Evil 4.
All right. So number 8 for me is The Quarry. So this, of course, Supermassive Games, the brilliant minds behind Until Dawn and the far more mixed bag Dark Pictures anthology. But I think The Quarry is really great. It's a really, really fantastic game, and it is, I think it's fair to call it a return to form for Supermassive, because I think as much as some of the games in the Dark Picture anthology have been okay, or good, right? I don't think there are many that would argue that it feels like it's been them trying to chase what they achieved with Until Dawn, and that I think the kind of plan to release these games as quickly as they have was probably a little overambitious. Whereas like The Quarry feels like the successor that Until Dawn deserves, where like it has a higher production quality, it has, I think, it has the similar quality of having a lot of, kind of like actors that I think for people our age are very recognizable, right? But are not necessarily like A-list stars. And I think it accentuates the whole like,
Well, like the girl from Modern Family and the dude from Pokemon.
Yeah, and
It's
Brenda
like
Song from
Detective
Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and all the Wendy Wu, Homecoming Warrior, things like that.
Oh my god, yes, she's from Social Network. I loved her. She was so good.
Yeah. So like it hits a lot of those notes, right? That I think Until Dawn did so well, where it is like the
and
kind
you also hate everyone. Like, I think that's the real thing for me when I was playing this. I was like, unlike the other games where there was always like one character where I liked every single character in this movie. It was like watching a teen slasher movie where none of them really have any kind of good traits, but ultimately in the end you like them. But for the most part, they're all insufferable. They're all out for themselves. I think so.
I mean, that's how you play. I don't know. I think you always play like a jerk, and then characters are mean to you. But
yeah, like they're like the arguing over the guns, for example, like all the time, and like going and like being all macho and alpha, and like trying to show that. There was like some characters who I just could not stand.
But you make those choices. You make the choices that make them behave
always.
That way.
Like, because sometimes they behave that way out the gate. Like the whole locking her out of the lodge at the beginning, right? Because they don't want to get her stuff, and like the being forced to sabotage the car. Like, that's a dick move. Just because
I don't think you have to do that though.
You do have to sabotage the car. You have to pick between either cutting the fuel line or stealing the rotary. Like, like we could have all gone home.
I mean,
but
like,
no.
look. I let that guy die, so. But yeah, I think I think it's got everything you need out of this type of game, right? As I said earlier, like I really do enjoy the choice-based, story-driven games, and I think it has a good, strong cast of characters. It's fun to play by yourself, great to play with other people. It has enough branching paths where your choices actually matter that you could play it multiple times and have a totally different outcome. So I think those are...
There's one choice right at the beginning I want to see what it does. You know, when you go to the motel, like, can you choose to go there? I really want to know what happens if you do.
Yeah.
Because I didn't.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's an interesting one. And there, you know, every game like that, there's choices where you're like, oh, I wonder how much certain things impact things. And some you're like, oh my God, it impacts things that much. And then there are some that are disappointing and you're like, okay, nothing matters.
Yeah,
right?
there was one thing that we did when we played through it where it just totally changed the end game. Like, there was no way we could have kind of solved the mystery or whatever. I don't want to spoil it, so I won't say, but we couldn't have completed all of the objectives, I'll say that, because of this one decision that we made.
And I love that, right? And like, so many of the choices that you're asked to make are like, have a timer and you have to make a split-second choice. And that, you know, that was something that really connected with me about As Dusk Falls as well, right? Is like you being on a timer and being like, you need to make a choice right now or it's going to make a choice for you, right? Or like, not making a choice is a choice. You don't get that opportunity that you get in, like, say, a Mass Effect or something like that, where it's like, okay, I have a question, I can sit here and think about it. Like, what are the ramifications of this choice, right? You just make choices in the heat of the moment like the characters would, and you hope for the best, right? And, like, you hit that point, like, I made some mistakes near the end where I got, like, 2 characters killed, and I was like, oh, shit, like, it's very clear that now if I had thought about it, maybe I would have done this other thing, but I didn't, and I pressed the button, and it happened, you know, and I think that that's so exciting, and kind of just seeing where your story goes organically and then planning out subsequent playthroughs to be like, oh, I'm going to do this instead, and I'll be mean to this character and I'll ally with this character and see how that's different. And, you know, that I think getting to play with story like that is just like one of the most rewarding things for me in a game. And like having like real agency over what happens in a story, I think is just so satisfying when it's done right. And I think The Quarry is definitely one of those ones that they do it right. And it's another one you could play this in a weekend, right? Like, this is an easy thing to like play with a friend, a roommate, a partner, or whatever, you know, and just like sit down and make some choices and together and see where the story goes. All right.
Sounds good.
Max, number 8.
I'll go for number 8. Number 8 is Poinpy. If you guys remember Netflix's Poinpy.
I don't.
You don't?
I do remember it. I was really excited about it. This was their first mobile game, Pete, that you had to have a Netflix account to download. And like you pull, right, Max, to like push him up?
So it was made by the guy that made Downwell.
Oh, okay. I like that.
And it's very much like the same sort of thing, but instead of going down, you're going up. You know, so you pull on Point P and you pick a direction for him to sort of go in, and you have to pick up fruit, and you also bounce off of things. You can like tap to slam down, and you can slam on top of enemies, or you can same way you can sort of jump on enemies, pick up different fruits, and to progress in the game, there's like something chasing you, and you need to complete like a recipe. So it'll be like you need 2 bananas and an orange.
Feed it.
Yeah, so you get your 2 bananas and your orange in one, you know, without touching the ground, and then it feeds the thing below you. And look at Pete downloading it now.
I'm downloading it right now.
And as you sort of progress there, you know, you can unlock new like modifiers for the character. So maybe instead of 2 jumps, you get 3 jumps, or maybe when you slam down, you actually get like another boost up or something like that. But they also then introduce more fruits, and there's more levels, and it's nice to have a mobile game that has like a definitive end. And I was stuck to my phone playing this. 2 games this year have stuck me to my phone, and my girlfriend will often reference Point P as at one point the third person in our relationship because I was just glued to my phone playing Point P. When I beat it,
What do you mean? Only 2? Wordle sounds like it was there as well for you at some point.
Well, no, but Wordle wasn't coming between us. Wordle was the glue.
Okay,
Glue's not a person, Steve. I've told you this before. And yeah, I mean, it looked amazing. The fact that it was a mobile game that you just downloaded had no ads because you'd already had a Netflix account. Just worth all of the time that I enjoyed it. Are you playing it now, Pete, or are you just
downloading it? Just downloading it. I'm going to check it out later.
You should. It's really good. it'll probably jump onto your list somewhere because I think it's yeah.
I really enjoyed
very, very,
Downwell.
very, very good.
So
Yeah,
I enjoyed Point P, and then I was like, it's run its course for me, and I just stopped playing, and
the last level
it
of
wouldn't have
Point
made my
P
list.
is so good. Um,
There, I think I only did 2 or 3 of the levels,
oh,
and then after that, I was just like, I'm done. It's kind of the same over and over again.
Point P is another one that I like 100%ed in the way that I like got all the power ups and did everything I could before I was done with it.
Yeah.
And all the there's like puzzle levels that are really nice where you have like only a certain number of pulls and bounces or points, I don't know what the hell they're called, to sort of finish the level and collect all the fruit and stuff, and they were really nice. You unlock those every sort of few levels. Yeah, just really nice progression and well worth anyone's time. If you have a Netflix account, just go on the App Store, search for Point P, POINPY, download it, and log in, and you'll be able to play it for free. So yeah.
I like Max describing how to find a game.
Well,
It's like,
if
so what do you
you
do?
say
I love
Netflix-
this.
It can be confusing
I'm
though,
just
because like
teasing you.
I
I'm
think
just
if
teasing.
people are just like, oh, it's a Netflix game, they're like, I'm gonna go to Netflix and find it. But
Yeah.
no,
You
Like
can do
with,
that. I just did that, and it took me to the Play Store.
yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. All right, go on Netflix and search Point P, then click on it, and then click download, and then wait, blah, blah, blah.
So I love this game called Kirby and the Forgotten Land. What you got to do is you got to get a Nintendo Switch, go to the eShop, search Kirby, find.
Or you can even go to a store and ask.
Steve, what's your number
someone
8?
for a copy? My number 8 is a game that no one's heard of called Tinykin.
Really? Oh my god.
Yeah, I loved this game. Max told me to check it out, and then I think
You
someone
literally played it.
else.
Did you
I
play it like
played
just
it.
recently?
I've played it
Oh,
during my down period where I was very sick for 2-3 days, and I just
good
finished it.
lad.
But someone else on Mastodon also recommended it to me as well, and I loved this game. Phenomenal game. Definite Pikmin vibes. There is some Toy Story vibes because you're like a small person in a big world, and like you're interacting with like these big toys. Like I loved the level where there was like a big Skeletrix set, and you've got to like finish it, which is really cool. And
The
then
giant bear that everyone was scared of, that was a lot of fun.
yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in the game. I had a really good time with it. I completed most of the challenges, not all of them. I haven't found all of the Tinykin, or all of the pollen for all that map, for like. But what I did play of it, I completed the main bit, right? Did the
You
story.
rolled credits.
The rocket ship went off, and it was really fun, really fun, really well designed game, really interesting mechanics. It takes like the Pikmin formula and then adds in a really cool 3D platformer that just feels solid with a beautiful art design, wonderful sound design, a really good, like really great, well thought out and designed levels. Some environmental puzzles in there. Like, there's a lot here to like, and I think it simplifies down Pikmin to its bare bones. Right? You don't have to worry about, oh, I've got to figure out and change the color of the Pikmin as I shoot them. It's just like the game knows that when you hold down the right trigger, you want to use the green Tinykin, and when you are in front of an electric socket, you want to use the blue ones. And then there are items that are like they've got like a purple border around them, so you know that the purple Tinykin can move them for you, and it's just a really cool game, and it's on Game Pass. I'd recommend if you've got Game Pass, check this one out because this pushed off Kirby off my list. Kirby is not on my list because
Damn.
of Tinykin. I enjoyed this more than I enjoyed Kirby.
I'm not surprised by that. I didn't think Kirby would be on your list. All right, so that takes us through number 8. So we're gonna have to go through these a little bit quicker, but I'm gonna give us a quick recap.
Take your own advice.
Okay, shut up. So quick recap for you guys at home. If you're not watching over on YouTube, I'll read them for you. So far, we have on my list As Dusk Falls, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and The Quarry. For Max, we have Scorn, Tinykin, and Point P. For Steve, we have Wordle, Signalis, and Tinykin. All right. So,
Which makes Tinykin our game of the year so far.
so far.
With 5 points.
Moving along to my number 7, I have Cult of the Lamb, which is a game I talked quite a bit about earlier in the year before we got so busy that we never talked about what games we were playing on the show anymore. But yeah, this was, I think, it was a real strong contender for me for like best indie this year, and it was, I think, probably the game I spent the most time with on my Steam Deck. Spent quite a bit of time chipping away at it, and I think for me, the thing that it really does best is the loop. I think the concept obviously is novel. The art style is cute. It's got good music. It has a lot going for it, I think, on a design and just kind of aesthetic level. But I think what really got its hooks in me was how satisfying I found the loop and the interplay between the two systems, right? Going through the kind of process of going through and doing the roguelite stuff and trying to get your resources and then coming back and doing the base building and trying to like figure out how to build a better cult and build a better machine so that you could, leverage your resources more effectively and kind of work towards whatever your next goal was. I think that is something that when done right, it just is really, it's addictive, right? Because as soon as you're sick of doing one half of the game, you're back into the other one, right? So I should say, before you can get sick of doing one half of the game, you're back in the other one. And I think because it was more roguelite than roguelike, that worked for me because I don't super love roguelite games because I feel like the lack of progression is always frustrating. But given the fact that what I was doing was always feeding into me building out my settlement, no run was a waste, even if it was a bust, right? I got something that I could leverage. So that made it a game that was really hard for me to put down, and like one I've thought about often after I moved away from it.
I
really
know.
wish I felt the same way.
Oh, I know this will be a game for me. What didn't you like about it, Steve? Briefly.
It just didn't click with me. I was like, if I'm going to play a game like this, I think I'm just going to go play Hades and finally finish that. And
That's a smart move.
the
Smart move.
combat just
Smart
didn't feel as solid as it did in Hades for me.
See,
like it
and
felt a little bit loose.
I get that, but I think for me, I enjoyed Hades, but I got frustrated by Hades after a while because it's so random. And like your ability to succeed is not always based on your skill, right? Because if you get items that you just don't vibe with or like whatever, right? Like, it's very easy to have a bad run or to like have a really good run and then have it get messed up at the end, right? And you're like, oh, great. Like, I just played for an hour and I have nothing to show for it, right? Because the higher you get in the game, the harder it is to actually level up your character. Whereas like, with Cult of the Lamb, like there are less options, so it's less likely for you to get stuck with something that you don't like. And I found it way easier.
I quite often found myself picking up straight away the one weapon because they give you one weapon choice at the beginning, unlike you get the choice of like 6 or whatever in Hades eventually. And I often found myself, I'm just like, I fucking hate this axe. It's so slow. I wish
See,
I
that
had
was
the
like
sword
the
that's,
only
like,
one
nice
I
and
liked.
fast.
So I would always pick that if I could.
It's just annoying that they give you one choice at the beginning. You can't like select from them, and you have to. It is luck as to which weapon you get. And I really wanted to like Cult of the Lamb because there's a lot here that I think I would like. I didn't find the camp building engaging enough for me. I couldn't give a shit about any of the characters and naming them and customizing them when I sacrificed them. I just thought that was just like a pointless mechanic. I was just like, I just always selected what the default was.
To say it's like pointless, I think is like you didn't get deep enough in the systems to like they're a resource.
The customizing someone's name and like changing like what they look like, it is pointless because eventually they're gonna die. And I just didn't really find that as engaging as I think it could have been. I got far enough into it, I think. I
do agree with that.
It didn't gel with me enough.
I would have liked to see there be more reason to invest in the villagers, but like I just don't think that's what they're for, right? Like I think a lot of people wanted it to have like more of a, Animal Crossing Stardew Valley type thing where like the characters are characters, right? But they're not, right? Like they're
No. They're just there. They're just like villagers in Age of Empires where they just go and they'll mine for you or they'll pray for you or they'll
get sacrificed for you so you can have a cool demon back you up, things like that. And I think I agree with you there where I would have liked more emotional stake in that, but
yeah, because I never felt like I cared about sacrificing any of them, and it would have been, I would have been nice to have like a quandary, like, oh, do I really want to sacrifice them? Like they're saying, like they don't want to,
See,
or
I would just
they're
bring them back from the
I really
dead.
like
You
this
know, I'm like, let me
villager.
sacrifice them and then I'll resurrect them again. And but anyway, Max, number 7.
Hello. My number 7. I'll be brief. Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I like Kirby. Return to form. Liked the post-game difficulty and final boss difficulty. Steve, what's your number 7?
Okay, that was brief. I know Pete
Yeah.
said to be quick, but we'll blast through then.
We spoke
My
about
number
it.
7.
Now we have to blast through
is-
everyone like that, but we did already talk about it.
Yeah. My number 7 is Rollerdrome. This was a real delight and a surprise for me. I felt like we saw this game announced for the first time in 2022, and then it got released in 2022.
Yeah.
I know that wasn't the case, but it felt like that to me, and
It was
a real
very
surprise.
quick. Like from first
Yeah.
reveal to release was only a couple months.
Absolutely gorgeous art style, really engaging gameplay. It feels great. I think it would have been higher on my list, but I feel like it could have done more. I would have liked to have had more of a move set, and just a little bit more there to make it feel a little bit closer to something like a Tony Hawk. But what it did do was combine like a really gorgeous shooter with great mechanics. You felt like an absolute hero when you landed. It's a phenomenal game, and one that I wish I had finished. I got very far into the game. I think I've got like 2 levels left to finish, and it gets very, very difficult. Like the difficulty curve really like spikes up to the point where you're like shooting down tanks and stuff. Like it's
Yeah.
a really, really cool experience.
I
So
really want to play this one. This is one that's been on my list for a while, and I've just been
Definitely worth
waiting
checking.
to grab it.
yeah, I would definitely check it out. This was one of my it was on my list all year, and it actually got bumped at the end of the year. When I played a couple more games. And I am a little disappointed that it got bumped, but I also think it's kind of appropriate. Because as much as I really loved Rollerdrome, I also didn't finish it. And I think for me, the difficulty spike that you're talking about is why it ended up lower on my list. Because it's a bad difficulty spike. It's like I'm not one to complain about that kind of thing. Like I liked that it was kind of like, like when we were playing it for the first couple times and we were first getting our feet wet with it, I was like, man, like I love chasing these high scores and like how chaotic it gets at the end. And it's like, I wanted to 100% every level and do all that stuff. But the further you get, the more it's just like, oh, like this feels hard because it's hard to follow because of how chaotic it is, not because it got more challenging in a way that was interesting or dynamic. You hit a point like halfway through the game where I feel like the best level happens, and then it's like, oh yeah, from here on out, it just kind of feels like it gets more bloated. And for a game that doesn't have that
I think after
many
that
levels,
point, it does tidy up. Like you end up getting to a point where there's like a boss, and like when that happens to me, it was a huge surprise. It's like I thought I thought I'd finished the level. And then you go through to the second section of that same level, and there's a boss, and I'm like, holy shit, there's boss fights in Rollerdrome, and it was such a cool experience. But that for me was where it then shifted.
I feel like that's kind of the peak of the experience, and like I feel like
and I feel like it probably will get, because after that they do introduce like new enemies. There's like things on the ground that hurt you. There's like all sorts of stuff that happens. But that is very much where like the game shifted for me and became tricky, and that's fine. I feel like it's nice to have the challenge, and I feel like if I was a patient enough person to put the time and put the effort in, I could hone my skills to the point where I would easily finish the game. And I liked that because I would then go back to like those early levels, and it feels very much like I felt with Elden Ring and how I felt with rhythm games in general, where you're learning the levels because the enemies always spawn in the same place. You know exactly what you're gonna do. You can get the chain, and it's really cool. And like with Elden Ring, like I feel like you start the game, the game's ridiculously difficult. You try and you get that tree sentinel immediately, and it just like fucks you up. And you realize like, oh, if I come back to this later on in the game, then it's super easy. And the same thing happened with Roller Drome. Like I would get to, like that halfway point where it's really, really difficult, and I can't progress further into these like in these harder levels. I'd go back to the early ones. I complete all the challenges that I thought were impossible
Yeah,
before. So
yeah.
you can really feel yourself getting better at the game.
Yeah, and I think where I got upset with it is I hit a point where I felt like I wasn't enjoying the gameplay enough to stick with it anymore, you know, and not that I didn't enjoy it overall, but it's just like, yeah, I have some notes, I think, for a Roller Drome 2, but I'll tell you what, I will show up day one for a Roller Drome 2 because I think this game whips. It has a brilliant style and vibe, and I'd like to see more of it. Team 7.
Did they put Ollie Ollie World out in the same
They
year?
did, within a few months of each
Like-
other, frankly.
Like how? Like I picked that one up because it's in the Humble Choice bundle.
Yeah, I
this
bought it
month,
too.
which is a really great deal. So
We'll
yeah,
talk about that on a future episode, all right? We'll keep
I
moving.
genuinely can't believe that they put both of those games out in 1 year though. Insane.
Yeah, they're a team to watch, I think. All right, number 6 for me is Multiversus. This is one I thought would be a little higher, but it's definitely a game that I think I had a peak and then a plateau with it in terms of how much time I was spending with it. But this dominated my time early in the year, and it was definitely one of the games I spent the most time with early on, and especially on Steam Deck. Like in those early days, where we were first kind of getting acquainted with our Steam Decks, I was playing a lot of Multiverses over there with my friend Jack, and I think it's just a really, really smart game. You know, it's a good use of a licensed IP. I think to make like a fighting game akin to Smash and like really make a play for that kind of party fighter, it has to be something like this. And I think when they first announced this game, I had a pretty cynical viewpoint of it. I thought that it felt like it was like, okay, like how good is this actually going to be, right? Is this going to be a proper competitor to Smash, or is this going to be like a Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl type situation?
Is that because it had the DC branding on it? Like you think if it was like say Marvel, and you would have felt different about it?
No, and just to correct you so the comments don't, WB, not just DC.
Okay, yeah.
But it being a licensed thing definitely was part of it, right? I don't think it's like, if it was Marvel, I wouldn't necessarily have trusted it more, because it's like it's still a licensed game, and it was the studio's first game, right? And like,
yeah,
there are a lot of veteran developers, like folks from Riot and Call of Duty, and like, you know, people who've worked on some of the big games of the day. But you know, this was player first at bat, and it is something that is a really ambitious project that's aping one of the most beloved fighting games in the world. You know, it's like, it was a tall order, and I think they delivered on it. I think it's a surprisingly good game.
I am shocked that from the initial pitch that it didn't come out just awful, right?
Yeah.
Batman versus Arya Stark or whatever it was, like there was just no way that in my head that would come out well. And it did, and I'm surprised it did. I didn't play it, but everyone that I know that did play it spoke very highly of it, and I was very impressed, I guess, that they were able to get the support going and keep them going, really. So
yeah, and there's
Wow.
a lot of care put into it. You know, like there's original voice lines for all the characters, like interacting with each other and things like that. And you know, like they have fun with the idea of like, oh, like you said, Batman's fighting Arya Stark. Like, what would they say to each other, right? Like, what would Steven Universe say to Superman, right? Or like whatever, right? Like that aspect of it is something that wasn't necessarily necessary for it to be good, but I think them going that extra mile, like, it shows the love that is being put on the IP that they're playing with, and I think that's a key part of having something like this feel genuine and not, you know, just this like crass commercial tie-in cash grab thing. And I don't think it feels that way, you know. Yeah, so it's a game I think if I never played again, I'd look very fondly back on my time with it. But I imagine now that season 2 is kicked off, I've been like, oh, you know, I think I want to get back into it. I want to call up my buddy and get the 2v2s going again. And hell, I mean, that as a thing, I think is something that's so unique in fighting games, that like the default mode is a 2v2, you online co-op experience, and that it works as well as it does, and that there's never been problems with, again, I say never, I've never had problems with matchmaking or things like that. Very low, like I can count the number of times somebody's dropped out of a game or gotten kicked out like on two hands,
Whereas on the opposite side, I did never play Smash Online for the reason of I would get 5 minutes
Exactly.
into a game and I'd be lagging and all sorts of stuff. And
Yeah, exactly. So I love Multiversus. I think it's really an achievement for a young studio, and it's a game I think hopefully has a bright future ahead of it, because it had a wave and a moment that has crested, and I don't think it's nearly as popular as it was at its peak. But
no, it was like the #1 game on Steam for a very
few months,
short
yeah.
while. It's like, yeah.
And it's not anymore, right? It's not even like in the top 20 all the time. So, that is what it is. But a game like that doesn't need to be the biggest thing in the world. It just needs a dedicated community that can support it. And it seems like it has that. So I think it's here to stay.
Mm-hmm. So you've got, what you're telling us, Pete, is you've got, well, you're not telling us now, but I know because you spoiled it earlier. You've got 2 licensed games from 2 new studios on your list.
That's correct.
Nicely done. One final handbrake from me, because I know this is going to be it's going to end up being a 2.5-hour episode at this rate. Steve, I know you haven't. Pete, did you finish all the games that are in your top 10?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, just checking.
Well, you finished Multiversus.
Yeah, finished it. Beat it. I finished the season 1 game pass. So come on.
Technically, yeah.
My number 6. We're on 6 now, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Xenoblade Chronicles 3, a game that I'm pretty sure won't show up on either of your 2 lists. So I'll give a bit of chatter about it.
I love this game. It's on my honorable mentions.
Okay, good. Well, I've been waiting for this game since Xenoblade Chronicles 2 came out back in the first year of the Switch launch, and for me, the Xenoblade games have very much been, I pick it up, I play nothing else for a month straight, and I do it. And well, this one didn't quite grab me in that way. I did take a couple of breaks on it. Still, by the end of it, it's one of the 2 games this year that made me cry, and it's just such a gorgeous world and such a technical achievement on the Switch that it's the only game that when they bring out people sort of try and defend Pokemon, I always just go, well, look at Xenoblade that came out a few months earlier than it, and look what it can do and look what it can achieve. I thought it did an incredible job of having, from the very beginning, a cast of 7 main characters, protagonists, and giving them all enough time to be their own characters, whilst also weaving them together in a way that you sort of believe that they're all sort of become friends. I thought at the very beginning it was a bit contrived the way they all come together, but I feel like the story didn't go quite where I wanted it to go, and it's sort of the final boss for me didn't do a lot, but the way that the different stories work and the way that the quests flesh out the world, I think is so. It just really made the world feel sort of big and lived in and real, because every time you go to a new colony and you meet a new leader who could then become potentially a part of your team. Excuse me. You then get to know more about how they're connected to the whole world. How they know
how
the
their
characters
colony
that you know.
lives, things like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah, how they know the characters that are in your party, and I feel like in previous games, specifically in 2, where they introduce characters, sort of towards the end, they'll go like, "Oh, here's another character. Here's another character." You don't get really enough time to get to know some of those characters as well. But this game did a great job of it. I still think that Xenoblade Chronicles 1 is my favorite of the franchise. I think this was very good, and I'm very much looking forward to the DLC. I have my issues with it, which is why it's not as high as like Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition was like up there in the year that came out. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 in 2017 was also very high up on my list. This one sort of is only 6 because I had some gripes with it, but I still think it's an excellent, one of the better RPGs I've ever played. And yeah, I'm glad to know at least made your honorable mentions, Pete.
I wish I had the Steam to finish it. I think if I had finished it, it probably would have made my list. I really appreciated it. I very much echo your statements about the cast. I think that is one of the strongest things it has going for it. The chemistry between the main characters is really good and satisfying. And I like the world. I think the music is great. I think it's got a great art style. I think one of the big problems I had with it is I felt compelled to do the side content because the side content is meaty, but a lot of it is kind of tedious. There's a lot of like, I don't really know where I'm going. I'll follow a green line and I'll run here and fight a bunch of guys and do a thing and fight a bunch of guys and then go drop off some resources. And that's fine, but I found myself not being super engaged in some of the moment to moment of doing that stuff. So I was like, oh, I think I want to save like the big story beats for docked mode, and then I'll chip away at this like the running around stuff in handheld mode. And I did not like playing it in handheld mode because it is at 540p, and I know that is a huge achievement over like how poorly Xenoblade 2 ran, and like this is a thing that I know if you're a Xenoblade fan, you're happy for how it is, right? But it being the game I went back to Switch for after playing on Steam Deck for the prior several months between Kirby and Xenoblade, I think hurt it. Because I wanted to be able to just have that Switch experience of pull and play. And, like, that was the first time where I really was like, man, okay, the limitations of this hardware are starting to frustrate me. Because this is a really pretty game that I want to play kind of as intended, right? And it feels like the Switch is standing in the way. And I got, I think, 20, 30 hours in, right? Like, I played a lot of the game, but, like, I also knew I had at least 70, 80 hours left at that point, and I'm like,
I think I maxed out about 100. So,
and I just didn't feel compelled enough to keep playing it that way. So I just kind of was like, I love this game, and I get it, and I feel like I know what it's about, and I want to find time to get back to it, but it just didn't get its hooks enough in me to be like, let me put another 80 hours into this guy, But all the respect in the world for it, for sure. Steve?
My number 6 is Return to Monkey Island. I was very excited when they announced this. Again, another game that got announced and released in the same year. It was a huge surprise. Initially was a Switch exclusive, but then has come to other platforms. So I've been playing this on Xbox game as it comes to Game Pass. So I've been playing it there, and it's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. The art style's wonderful. Everyone that hated on it, I really hope they retract their comments formally because it is a beautiful game. I love the fact that unlike old Monkey Island games, you can move around with a stick and you've got full control of motion on the characters that you play, because you play multiple characters in this game, which was a nice surprise. It was really good fun. I've laughed out loud at the script. It's hilarious. There's some great references to the old games. A lot of references to the old games, but it doesn't matter if you've not played those old games, because I still think you would understand the story, you would understand it. And they've got a really great scrapbook on like the on the start screen where you can kind of flick through and see Guybrush's old adventures that he's done. Because I only played the first Monkey Island game. I didn't play number 2 or number 3.
Shout out to that as a thing. I feel like that's becoming more common. There's another game on my list that does that.
They've even got a feature which I loved from Until Dawn, and I've not seen any other game do it since, which is the previously on feature.
The last time you were playing this.
Yeah, and they have that for Monkey Island. So, but that previously on Return to Monkey Island, and they'll give you a quick recap of what you had just done, and then you can jump back into the gameplay. But
normalize that in video games.
We need it.
I think more people would finish games if every game did that. Honestly.
Me too, because that, and also like a place to go and try the controls out again. Like, take me through the tutorial again at some point. Like, I should be able to go back and relearn the controls, because I feel like that's something that happens all the time. But yeah, I'm having a really great time with it. I'm probably going to finish it. I was planning on finishing it tonight, but it'll probably be tomorrow or the weekend now, because I think we're going to go long on this episode.
No.
But yeah, I definitely recommend checking out Return to Monkey Island.
Very nice. All right, number 5 is a game that I finished last night ahead of this conversation, and it is Pentiment. So of course, this is the game from Obsidian. that is, the kind of pet project that there's another one that was announced and then quickly released, right? And it is I think it's, in terms of trying to compare it to games I've played before, it's probably most akin to Disco Elysium, where it's very much a role-playing game where you make a couple choices about your character's background, and then they influence your ability to navigate problems in the world. And it's tough to talk about what the game is about without spoiling much of what
It's
makes
a
it
murder
special.
mystery. I think that people know it's that.
Yeah, and I think it is a murder mystery, but I also would argue that it's not. It is and it isn't. And it is very unique in the genre. If you appreciate murder mystery, if you appreciate narrative-driven adventure games, I think it has a lot of very, very novel things going on, not only in the way that it has commentary on the very idea of like violence as a form of justice, or like any kind of punitive justice system, but also like the way that it plays with time, the way that it plays with character building, how much it taught me about its period of history as somebody who is interested in history, but I certainly wouldn't consider myself a history buff. I didn't know a lot about the Holy Roman Empire and kind of the early sects of Christianity, and I had a passing concept of the influence of paganism on Christianity, right? Just from reading and being interested in those things as a youth exploring spirituality and things like that. But there's so much historical context that the game provides, and from what I understand, it's very well researched. Because that was one of the first questions.
That's like that glossary you can bring up, right? And it like tells you all of this additional information.
Yeah,
that
it'll
you
like
can get or not get.
Yeah, it'll like name drop an event, and it'll be underlined, and you can press a button and it'll zoom out and like give you an explanation of like, oh, like, this conflict happened here and it led to this, or like this is the city where the witch trials of 1483 happened, or whatever, right? So all of that was stuff that I didn't really know how I was going to feel about Pentiment, right? Like, it was a game that caught my attention, and again, it's in a genre I generally appreciate, but I didn't necessarily know how much I was going to connect with the script or the setting or the world, and it really surprised me, and I think it was a game that I enjoyed in its first act, and I got to a point where I thought the game was almost over, and then I realized that it was actually only just starting. And I think as good as the first act is, the second and third acts are incredible. And I think really, really worth your time.
I'm interested, like, what were some of the early choices you picked? Like, what did you
For
study?
my background?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had my guy, he had been working in Italy, so he spoke
Mine too,
Italian.
yeah.
That's a really valuable one. He was I think it's orator or something like that, where it's like he like was a good speaker and could debate people and convince.
Mine studied law. So
I also did that one.
He did, yeah.
And that was useless. I was like,
totally useless.
there was not one time where knowing the law helped me at all.
People just think you're a dick.
Yeah, everyone's like,
you're
kind of pretentious asshole. Why do you even know anything about law? You're an artist.
And I liked I picked the one where it was like, what did you do? What did you do in your free time? And I was like, I spent time with lots of women and
that hedonist.
stuff like that.
I also chose that, which was hilarious.
And then you could just like flirt with all the nuns throughout the rest of the game. Which is just hilarious to me.
Be a bit of a lovable scoundrel. That was like how I played him,
Yeah, me too. It was great.
And then seeing how that character evolves over time, and it's just it's
well, there's even some like quandaries that you have to pick, right? Like there are things like do you do you give the landlord your money early? Like do you then go and make the effort to go and ask for an advance and go through that whole rigmarole in order to take it back, to give them the money and do that good thing for them, that good deed for them? Do you go to dinner with your friend, or do you go and do something that benefits you?
And
You know,
there's
there's like
like
lots of choices you have to make.
there's a lot of cool kind of like Majora's Mask moments in it too, where there are like minor storylines that play out in the background based on choices that you make. Like there's a character who you can be friendly with, right? Who like expresses that he has always wanted to get married and have a family, but he's not very confident and he's getting older, and he talks about this woman that he like met that he had a crush on or whatever, and you can like encourage him to go and like seek her out, and then like later on, you know, you might see him get married, right? Or like things like that, you know, or like you might you know, make a decision that you don't help a character, and then they're like, oh, they remember that and they don't like you, or like you make a comment that offends them, and the game doesn't even always tell you like what those moments are, right? Like you'll just make actions, and then later on you might need that person and you're trying to convince them to help you, and they're like, oh no, like you know, go screw off, right? Because you were rude to me about this, or you didn't help me when I needed you then, or whatever. And just kind of the way that it plays with like small town dynamics and like the way that family trees develop. So much going on that I think is really good and well executed and fleshed out, but also just stuff you don't see in other games, right? Like so many of the themes of it and the way in which it explores them were unique, I think, and not something I could easily compare to another game.
Did you read Rebecca Valentine's piece on it over at IGN?
No.
Yeah, she did a great piece back in June talking about like the history of the game and how Josh Sawyer was inspired by a game he played back in 1992, and then he pitched this game when the Fergus Urquhart, the founder of Obsidian, and him were both at Black Isle Studios. This game has been in his mind for decades, and he's like now finally been able to make it.
That's so
which
cool.
I think is really, really cool.
Very cool. Also, you know, it's a Christmas game in the way that Die Hard is a Christmas movie, and we don't get a lot of those.
Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
And this is a Christmas game. Shout out to Pentiment. Loved it. All right. Oh God, Max is frozen.
I think Max is frozen, so I'll go next.
Yeah, you go next.
With my number 5, which is I don't know if it made it to your
Oh God,
list.
hold on, he disappeared. Okay, now it's just the two of us. You go.
That game is Stacklands.
Oh.
I had such a good time with Stacklands, such a cool concept. You just get these little packs of cards, you open them, you find out what's inside, and you stack them on top of each other to get them to do things, and you have to figure out the recipes to create things and go exploring. There's so much cool stuff in Stacklands. And it was something I'd never seen. I can't wait for them to release their big update to the game this year. That's going to expand it and add way more card packs and different things that you can do in it. But I remember jumping on stream after we got the code for this game, not really knowing much about it, and just playing through it. And I had such a good time with it. Such a good time with Stacklands. I'm really glad that it made my list.
Oh, sorry, game's called Stacklands, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's your number 5.
My number 5. Really great game.
Interesting.
I forgot
check
about that
this
one.
one
It was a good one. It was a really good game, though. I did really enjoy that. I certainly didn't. I don't think I got as deep into it as you did, but I definitely
Yeah,
played
I
a
spent
bit of it.
hours on that game.
It's
It was like
fun.
I think my Steam said it was about 20 hours I played a Stacklands. I
Nice.
spent a long time playing that game.
That was one of those early Steam Deck games for me too. Like I know I was like
Yeah.
fooling around on the touchscreen with it and was like, oh,
Yeah,
this is
because you could play with
perfect.
the touchscreen or the trackpad. Like
Yeah.
you couldn't play that game with a controller. And it's one of those games that is uniquely needs like a pointing device in order to play it.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, really cool game. And the studio behind it, I think it's Sock Pop. Really, really cool. They run a Patreon, and every month the patrons fund a new game, and they put a new game out every single year, every single month. And then the games that do well from like the patrons vote on it, they end up publishing them onto Steam and kind of continuing to develop it. It's a really, really cool
I
concept.
really want to get them on the show this year. I really want to interview them. I think what they do is so interesting.
Yeah.
All right, what was your number 5, Max?
Oh, yes, internet problems. My number 5 for this year is Vampire Survivors.
Oh,
Wait till
okay.
then.
A very just a great little engine builder. It's cheap. You can play it in half an hour. We spoke about it on this show and the Steam Deck podcast many times before. It's just one of those games that this is my usual pitch. It's impossible to explain it to you, and impossible to get someone who doesn't know what it is to look at it and go, "That's a good game." Because I myself, first time I looked at this game, I was like, "Why is this popular? Why are people playing this absolute dog shit looking game?" And I started playing it. I was like, "This plays like dog shit too." And then you're within like finish the first game, and I was like, "Well, I can do better than that." And then I go again, and I'm like, "Well, I can still keep getting better." And then you sort of start to understand how it all works and how you're
Yeah, and then it shows you
picking
new
up.
shit on the menus, and you're like, "Oh
Yeah,
fuck, there's a lot to this game."
and
Yeah.
you're picking up new items. And as you pick up that item, you can then upgrade that item, or you can then synergize items together. And it's sort of like had that element of being a roguelike where you start with nothing and it's like, what can I get? Oh, this is a random thing. Oh, this is a random thing. But also with the sort of like hands-off approach of how a mobile game sort of feels to me, where I'm not like actively engaged in it as much because I can sort of like pause it, move on. There's not a lot of like strategizing in terms of like I need to press all these buttons and do these combos. It's just I'm moving around, picking up items, and then your thought really comes in. It's like, okay, cool. Now I've got this item. What do I want? What works for me? What am I upgrading? What are my goals? What am I working
As
towards?
Steve and I like to say, this is a perfect TV game.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. This is a game that it surprised me. Also, technically, a game that came out initially in early access last year, but was actually released 1.0
We
this
take
year.
the stance on this on flip screen that if it goes 1.0 in the year, that's the
That's
year
official.
it released.
Fine,
You
yeah,
could have
yeah.
it before that if you wanted, right? Like if you want to name a game in early access, a game last year, I think that's fine. But hits 1.0,
Cool.
that's an official release. I think that's
All right, cool. Good, because I think Hades 2 might come up twice if it doesn't leave early access.
that would be fair. That would be fair. I think that's fine.
If I'd have picked Baldur's Gate 3 up this year, I think it probably would have made my list this year,
I
and
mean
then
that's
probably also
specifically
next
why
year
I
as
didn't.
well.
I'm like, I want to play it when it's done. We're gonna play it when it's done.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So number 4 for me, Pokemon Legends Arceus.
Wow.
This was
Cool.
my most played game on Nintendo Switch this year, by a pretty significant margin. I think this is it's in the conversation for me for favorite Pokemon. I it's not my favorite, but it is in that real like if we were gonna make a personal tier list, right? It would be among the upper echelon for me. I think this game to me feels like the first time that Pokemon has done something meaningfully fresh. I mean, from a gameplay perspective, in a really long time, right? If you want to just talk about overall, probably since the switch from sprite based to 3D models, this is, since the GameCube era, the first attempt at like a quote unquote spin-off that isn't just, like obviously Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, right, has like the traditional gameplay with some of it stripped back and some other junk thrown on top. We have plenty of Pokemon spin-offs, but like this was a real shakeup of how the battle system worked. It was a real shakeup of progression, right? Like moving away from gyms and moving away from battling being the way that you progress and having the focus be more on filling out the Pokedex and capturing Pokemon and going through these kind of like, almost Monster Hunter inspired boss battles, things like that. Those are all things.
They definitely Monster Hunter inspired. Like even the
Yeah.
regions and the fact that they're like interlocked, like little sections, areas that you go to is Monster Hunter inspired.
Sure. And all of that, I think it made for an experience that was really surprising. I think even until I was actually playing the game, I don't think I really realized how different it was going to be. And I think how much I liked it was a big part of my struggle to get invested in Scarlet and Violet later in the year, right? Obviously technical issues and kind of my almost like moral feelings about it of like, you didn't need to put out 3 Pokemon games in a year and have one of them launch and be, this technically flawed, right? regardless of where you land on it as overall quality. But I had just played a Pokemon game in January that I think is one of the best that I really, really loved, and that earlier on Nintendo Noise, right? Like Chewy and Sierra and I were obsessed with it. Like, we all put hundreds of hours into it, and I loved every second of it. And the fact that we got a brand new game rather than DLC for this is probably one of my biggest disappointments of the year. I was really hoping for, Battle Tower or like a new post game storyline or something like that could kind of bridge the gap between the two experiences, because I did want more battling. I did want more of, that combat that I love. But, for the notes I could give it, I'm far more happy with the way in which it, actually meaningfully tried to do something different and tried to evaluate what are the things about Pokemon that are important, that people care about, and how do we explore those more meaningfully, right? It's the first time in a long time where I felt like exploration was really rewarded in a Pokemon game. And I was so excited every time I unlocked a new ride Pokemon to go back to areas I had already been to and be like, let me get to this new area and see what Pokemon are here, and let me see if I can find this resource I need here, and let me complete all the side missions and build out this town and have narratives in the Pokemon world that I care about on some level again. So many of those things I think have just been real fumble points in most Pokemon games for the last couple of years. And like it wasn't a perfect iteration of what I wanted, but it's the biggest step in the right direction that we've had in, I don't know, I can't even remember, since I started asking for change.
Funnily enough, this is in my bottom 2 for the year.
Yeah, I know you didn't jive with it.
Not even slightly. Yeah. It's one of the only 2 games this year that I played, I don't know, 10 hours of and was like, I hate.
Stay on the mic.
Sold it. Sorry, yeah, one of the only 2 games this year that I was like, I bought it, played it, 10 hours, thought, I hate this, and then sold it. Actively disliked.
Even I liked it more than you by the sounds of it, Max. I played it for 15, 20 hours and then sold it. I traded this game in. I don't play Pokemon games though, so.
No, you do. You just don't like them. You play them.
Yeah, that's very true. That is very true, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, different strokes and all that, but yeah, that's an opinion I don't understand. And you're not alone. There are a lot of people I've seen who have been like, oh, I couldn't really connect with Arceus earlier this year, and I love Scarlet and Violet, right? Like, that's what I want. I'm like, I don't see it. For me, this was the winner. Definitely, it's my 4th favorite game of the year, right? So pretty damn good.
On to Steve, then, I guess, is it?
Sure is.
No, you next.
I get to go again.
Wait,
okay.
But you know what? Actually, sorry. I'm going to interrupt you real quick and remind everybody that we got to do some housekeeping. We're halfway through the show. It's time. I meant to do it at halfway
through. Bloody hell.
Yeah, well, halfway through the list, right? I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't think it'll be a 3-hour show. Anyway.
No, it's not, because I think we're all going to have repeating games from
probably.
Here on out.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have spent 5 minutes on each of his.
What you're doing right now is wasting more time by talking over me while I'm trying to go through the plugs. So maybe just shut up. This is your 3rd handbrake now. So one more, and I'm gonna handbrake you out of here. All right. So hey, just a reminder: this episode of Nintendo Noise is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of. Oh wait, I said Nintendo Noise. This episode of the FlipScreen Games Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of January. For the first time ever, they are Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valens, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Mary Berry, Matthew MQC, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/FlipScreenGames. Y'all are the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. If you want to show your support like they did, you want to find our Discord link, you want to come check out all the content we're making all over the web, head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website. Go click some links and get involved, however you choose to. Thanks for tuning in. Max, number 4.
My number 4 game for the year of 2022 is Marvel Snap.
Okay.
Which you asked me earlier where it was going to feature in my list, and 4 it is. This is when I initially made my first tweet when I beat God of War and said, I'm not going to play another game that came out this year, so here's my final list. then I played Marvel Snap, and I'd been actively avoiding it. So before you spoke about it, I was saying to friends of mine who were playing it, I'm not going to touch it. I refuse to touch it because I know I'll get addicted to it. And I can't do it. I can't,
Not
get
again.
addicted to another game. I can't do it. I can't spend all my time on a phone game. I can't do it. And then eventually I decided to get it, and I have, it's now this is the other game this year that has become the third person in my relationship, because Kat will sometimes think I'm talking to her, look over, and I'm actually just looking at my phone, like, doing really well in a game or something. And I've really spent a lot of time strategizing on decks. I've spent a lot of time sort of coming up with my own synergies, and I'll see someone do a synergy. I'm like, I want to be able to do that, or like
Yeah.
I'll think of an idea and I'll try it out and it'll work. And as the meta has changed and people have changed different things, I've been lucky enough to be able to stay quite varied and nimble with the decks. And if my Infinite deck, which I was showing Pete, and I was just rising through the ranks with it, at one point it lost me 15 ranks because it was just, people were expecting it. So I changed up my deck and I started rising up again. And right now, the new season started, and I've managed to go from 30 up to 45, I think I am now, with sort of
Nice.
one strategy. But now people have started to counter it. So now I'm like, okay, cool, I'll try something else. As trading card games, or I guess competitive card games is probably the more appropriate term now. This is definitely ranks as like probably my favorite. I played a lot of Hearthstone back in the day, but my issue with Hearthstone was there's so many cards, and it was really hard for me to come up with my own stuff. I felt like I had to be net decking all the time. I had to be, there's so many cards, and there's so many cards that have to be in a deck, and it's hard to necessarily plan ahead and specifically strategize with Hearthstone, I find, because like it's like 20 cards in a deck, I think, or something, like maybe even 40. It's a ridiculous number of cards, and you have to hope that your certain cards go together. Whereas Marvel Snap, you've got 12 cards in the deck. I as long as you have a plan A and a plan B, I know I want to get all my 2 cards down. Cerebro, then Mystique. Bang, I win the game, right?
Sure.
But if that doesn't work out, let's say one of my cards gets his power knocked up, his power knocked down. My Cerebro's not going to activate. Cool, okay, I've got a plan B. I've got my throw down a storm.
You've got your other
throw
win
down,
conditions lined up.
Yeah, throw down a storm, throw down a brood. I've won that area. Cool. Move on to the next one. I've got Blue Marvel. I've got all these various things going on.
I think it being every match is 6 turns makes a huge part of that too, right? Because it's like you don't have to build a deck with dozens of different options, right? That like and the expectation that every match is going to be, it might be 5 minutes, it might be 40 minutes, right? Like I love that about Marvel Snap, and it makes it so easy to be a thing that you play really quickly when you have a second, or for a few hours because you're just in it, right? And you're on a roll.
Yeah, and I will play it for hours. This is the only game other than Elden Ring that we had to make an entire group chat for because we were talking about it so much, and me and some of my friends, we're constantly just sharing screenshots. We're sending ideas. I got this card. What would this go well with? And you'll go, So one of my friends in both seasons that have finished got to Infinity or Infinite, whichever it is. 100 rank 101. He smashed it. So we'll go to him with like, what about this? And sometimes he'll say something like, that wouldn't really work. And I'll go, well, actually, I do it, and it works really well for me. And it's one of those games that is constantly evolving because it is new and it is sort of there are things happening.
I love how much prediction is a part of it too. Like I remember there was a time where we were waiting for Steve to hop on and we were playing and you were casting your screen and I was like sitting there like we were making comments and stuff. And that was, I remember, something that like there's a couple opportunities, right, in certain games where it's just like if I think through everything that they could theoretically do based on what I think their deck is, like here's like let me see if I can trick them or outthink them, and like that is such Pokemon shit. Like that's what I like about Pokemon, right? Is like, okay, like it's chess, right? Like it's like knowing what the pieces are and knowing how they can move and thinking 3 plays ahead.
I also think that the snap mechanic is genius.
Yes.
At any point in the game, I can say, I think I'm going to win here. Snap, I get double the reward. However, if I lose, I have double the loss as well. So you can also use it.
Yeah,
I suppose so. Yeah. But I can use it as a bluff. Sometimes I'll get to turn 5, and there's been a couple of times now where I've been specifically with a friend of mine, and I'm like, look how much he's got me here, and he'll go, just snap. I'm like, no, because he's won. He's like, just snap, and I'll snap, and he'll retreat. And there's no
Yep.
chance I could have won. But as far as he's concerned, I've got something up my sleeve that I'm just waiting to lay down. So that's why I snapped. And yeah, there's something very satisfying about, they snap, and you look at your things and you go, yeah, I can snap. So I'll snap back and I can win. And it's just very, very satisfying. And what's also good is that I know out of the hundreds of games I've played, I've definitely at least made one person cry. There's no way that I haven't, because sometimes, they snap, you snap, they think they're going to win, and they do like their big play, and then you just got one card that's just like, no, sorry, like I win
I
this
love
game
that
now.
moment. Like, that is such a satisfying. Like, I had that the other day where somebody they snapped and then they taunted me. And I was like, you idiot, I'm winning. Like, I'm going to win the game. Like, how do you possibly think that you're going to win right now? And then it was like, I literally won in all 3 zones. And it's just like, it's so deeply satisfying to just be like, you absolute goober. Like, what did you do? Like,
It's when you do something as well, like, so that the cards like not Mystique, Mantis, or cards that take their card, or you pull a card from their deck and you have that card, but they don't know what you've pulled.
I hate
So
control.
I love it because so earlier he played Moon Knight, which loses a card from our hand, right? And it lost my one card. The one card I needed to win the game, Infinite, it took it from my hand. And I was like, I have literally no other strategy. I was like, okay, I'll keep playing. He hasn't snapped. As soon as he snaps, I'll duck out, but there's no chance I'm going to win this game, right? I play a Mantis down just because it's the only card that's in my hand, right? And it pulls from his deck a card that it was Ghost Rider. You play it down and it returns the last card, one of your destroyed cards, to your hand. The only card that had been destroyed is the one card
that you need.
The game. So I played his Ghost Rider and I won the game. And I was like, that's beautiful.
I love that, and I love the way that the different zones, like the whole King of the Hill strategy thing, like it not only keeps the game fresh because they're different every time, but it also, like, it's fun the way that you'll see it interact with your deck. Like when you're like, oh my god, like I can use this to exploit this thing in my deck so well. Like I play, my main deck is a destroy deck. So, like, anytime there's, like, a thing where it's like, oh, the first card you play here gets destroyed, I'm like, thank God. Like, that's amazing. Or, or, like, the copy in your hand card, right? Or, like, the double power. And I'm like, great, I'll play Carnage here and make him a 50. Like,
build a location with this card, and you just drop down Hulkbuster, and you get 4 of them. They all become 1, and you have 3 other slots with which to do whatever you want with. That's always just great fun. So yeah, easily has just risen up the ranks and is just so well designed. I'm really excited to see where the game goes in 2023.
Yeah, I adore it.
Steve, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Case of the Golden Idol.
Oh, wow.
I don't think either of you have played this, have you?
No. I think, did we speak about this a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, the Obra Dinn-like game. Really, really cool. Amazing cast of characters, very unique art style, which I think a lot of people will dislike when they first look at it, but I know the majority of people will come to love it. It's a wonderful game. Like, it's a great mystery with a unique mechanic of you find these words around the scene, and then you have to put those words into you're in exploration mode, and then you go into like solve mode, and then you have to like match up those words with people, or there's like a level where you have to figure out where they're sat on the dining table and who sat where, and figure out like the place setting, and just find out what's going on, like what the hell's going on in this scene. And it was such a unique experience, and like starts off super simple, like you find the words around the level, and there's a couple of red herrings in there, but not many, and then it really ramps up, and like becomes like a challenge. It's like a logic puzzle. Like each level is just a giant logic puzzle that you're trying to figure out. Like, this person couldn't possibly be sat next to that person because that person has to be sat at the head of the table, but then there's like a letter that said that this person wanted to sit next to that person, but did that actually happen? Oh, but this person's like vegetarian, so they had requested like a different meal, and you only find that out by going down into the kitchen area. There's like so much stuff that's happening, and you're just solving these mysteries, and all throughout there's this golden idol that's kind of following you through history. It gets like passed from person to person to person, and everyone that seems to possess the golden idol dies, and there's a murder that's been happened in every single level that you have to solve. Just a really great mystery game. This game was the reason I didn't put Pentiment on my list. As much as I love Pentiment, and as much as it's a very different game, there is those role play mechanics that you have in Pentiment that has like replayability. I think the Case of the Golden Idol for me was just a more fun mystery game. I enjoyed the story that it presented.
Did you
I
finish
enjoyed
Pentiment?
the fact that there was. No, I haven't finished Pentiment. I do think I think I'm going to go back to it, but Case of the Golden Idol was just captured.
Did you finish the first act?
Yes.
Okay. Because it's hard to talk about. It's hard to talk about without spoiling things. I thought it was interesting when you're like, oh, I thought it was like a better like mystery story, and it's like, oh, that's ostensibly what Pentiment is about, but it's about more than that, which is why it's like I would categorize it as a murder mystery, but like that's only part of what it really is, you know, which is it's a conversation for another day, but I found that interesting.
I'd be interested what you think when you play Case of the Golden Idol if you do get around to it.
Yeah, I'd like to.
I think the gameplay, there's like a lot more gameplay to Case of the Golden Idol as well. Like you're this exploration and then the solving, and you really feel like a detective, and I liked that. Whereas, Pentiment's a narrative-driven game. It's very much, it's inspired, and Josh Sawyer said it's inspired by stuff like Oxenfree and Night in the Woods, and that's where he got like the inspiration for, and it very much feels like those games, and it's like outlining it in front of you. Whereas Case of the Golden Idol, it's like you're just thrown in at the deep end. It's like, here's a scene, and you have no idea what you're doing. It's just like, okay, right, I better get to work then. Let's look in pockets, let's look in drawers, let's look everywhere, like figure the fuck out what's going on. Like, oh, there's little bits of paper on the floor. Let's see if we can piece that together. There's just a lot there, and I had such a good time with it.
Very nice. Yeah, this is what I hope I can find time for. I know, like, when you got us codes for it, and I wanted to get around to it, but I think it was when I was preoccupied with God of War at that time. So yeah, maybe I'll try and get to this one during a quiet period in the year.
This is a TV game. You can play this while having something on in the background.
Okay.
There's no dialogue in the game, so
fair enough. All right, so my number 3 is Horizon Forbidden West.
Wow, I forgot that even came out.
So I big fan of the original, right? I think the world of Horizon is very well realized. I really like the setting, and I think it's a really fresh take on like a post-apocalypse narrative. You know, I think it touches on similar kind of themes as Fallout, interestingly enough, with the idea of like what life is like after the bomb, right? But like I like how it's a very naturalistic approach to that world, right? Where it's like the world has been rebirthed and regrown, and there's all these new cultures and customs and things kind of built on the bones of our world, right? And I think for the most part, I would say that Forbidden West, I think is a very, very traditional sequel, right? Like it's everything from Horizon, but bigger and better, and with more systems and more things, to explore and all that good stuff. And I think from a design standpoint, I think they really stuck the landing. And I think the world is beautiful. It's a lot of fun to explore. I think the open world is really satisfying. There are some new traversal tools that I think, while not perfect, like in their functionality is good, and it makes the way that you engage with the world a lot more satisfying. And like I think it gets away from some of the things that I find most frustrating in open world games that don't have the kind of traversal mechanics that I feel like we're now accustomed to some degree after Breath of the Wild. Where like you have a point where you can see a place that you want to go, and it's like, I'm playing as this character who can leap. Why can't I get up a small, there's an area right there. Why can't I just climb up it, right? Like something like that. And I think Horizon did a good job of kind of creating a more open map and a more like, a more seamless experience of exploring the world, and definitely still room for improvement, but Those were some
The
of my
DLC might take that there though,
maybe so.
because it's PS5 exclusive, as Max pointed out in the last episode.
Yeah, maybe so. So yeah, I think like when it comes to those things, like they really did a good job of upping the ante and learning from the choices and mistakes they made in the original. I think something that I think is more divisive is like where the story has gone. And I know for me,
Yes.
I like it a lot. I'm very interested in where things are going. I think my biggest criticism is I like how the original story is a self-contained story, right? Like it has a clear trajectory and it reaches an endpoint and it sets up that there is more to come and that there are more adventures to be had and that like the broader story isn't necessarily over, but it reaches a natural conclusion. Whereas I think this game ends on what is effectively a cliffhanger, right? Where it's kind of like, okay, like this was part one of this broader story. And that didn't work for me as well. I think the first game had a really satisfying mystery to be solved in the, yes, we're trying to figure out the secret of Aloy's origins and like understand what's going on in the mountain and all that stuff. And then there's also this dual narrative of, what happened in the past and why is our world gone and what was Zero Dawn and all of those kinds of things. And I don't think that this game has mysteries that are as satisfying to uncover. And I think that is something that, it is what it is. It's a different kind of game and a different kind of story. And, I am interested in the broader narrative that they're telling. So it's like fair play, but I think I definitely get why it wasn't as it didn't hit as hard this time around. I think it's clear why. But I think that said, it's still a game that like I really, really enjoyed getting lost in the world. I platinumed it. I went out of my way to spend as much time in it as I could. And yeah, and I think like when it comes to like the combat, the enemy design, all that stuff, like they did so much that made it feel fresh again and that, reminded me why I connected with the first one so much. So yeah, still a Horizon stan.
You have some weird scores at the end of this because my number 3 is also a game that is on neither of your lists. It is Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, the sort of expansion.
Talk about games I forgot
You
came
just
out.
put DLC on here now. I'm gonna bring in the Resident Evil 8 DLC.
Well, it's not just
then.
DLC. It was like its own expansion. You could buy it in a box, so I think it counts.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. This is, I was a big fan of Monster Hunter Rise when it came out last year. And this took everything that Rise did amazingly, added more, the improved verticality, the way your character moves, so fluidly, and you can like just zip through the air or just like move yourself around and stuff like that. It takes that and adds other levels to it, and it adds, even more options for customizing your loadouts and your movesets and stuff like that. Because Rise is really the first Monster Hunter game that let you, if there were parts of your weapon you didn't like, there were a few things you could change. You could have two different attacks that you could have. You could pick which one you liked best, but you could also now in Sunbreak swap between two loadouts you'd made on the fly that would also then give you like a dodge. So you could like swap to a loadout, do a dodge, and then lead into attack. It was just like really, really fluid. The new monsters they added were incredible. Like the old monsters they brought back. They finally brought back my favorite monster, Gormagala. They brought him back after 2016. I last saw him. No, what year did? I think it was 2015 or 14 that Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate came out. But why this is so high on my list is not just because it is great, because it is. It's because, like all the other Monster Hunter games, me and my friend Ryan, we'll get the Monster Hunter game together and we'll just play through everything we possibly can. And last year, we'd both been through breakups at the same time, and luckily Monster Hunter Rise was coming out within like a couple of months of that. So we just spent ages playing this game, and then this time around, I was just going to his house all the time. We were doing like all-nighters, and we were just like spending time at his, playing through this like we were sort of like teenagers again, like we were children. There was no,
Yeah.
um, it wasn't like, oh man, like I've really got to go because I've got work. It was just like, I don't care, man. We're playing Monster Hunter. His brother also got the game, so there were sort of three of us all playing together. And there were just some incredible moments, and we just had so much fun learning weapons together, trying things out, getting through all the content. All the sort of personal memes you come up with and the sort of in-jokes you have by playing those games. And I think this game has encapsulated that for me more than any game has in the last couple of years. And the only reason it's not higher is because my top two, just the sheer quality of them is why they're sort of higher up in this game. But
Yeah,
I
I
understand
can
Monster
guess
Hunter's
both
not.
of your top twos now.
Yeah. It's very easy. Like it's hard to obviously like you guys maybe don't like. I know you tried Monster Hunter Rise, didn't you? I remember Steve, you
I
tried like a
did. I
demo.
liked it. I liked it enough. I liked the cats; they were cute.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's not going to be for me. Too
I
grindy.
really,
Too much of a time
really hate
investment.
Monster Hunter. It's just not for me. And it's not like I think it's bad. It's just not a flavor that is for me, And I've given my due diligence, and it just does not click with me.
And that's fair enough.
But respect.
Thank you, Stephen.
So Max, the reason you gave as to why this is so high on your list, that you play
Mhm.
with friends and you loved it, is probably the reason why my next game, The Quarry, is so high on my
Okay.
list. And that's because I
Oh,
played through
wow.
it with my dad at Christmas, and I had such a good time playing through it.
I was just like, what
but
is this motherfucker about to say? I was like, I really thought you were about to... Words with friends, Yeah, it came out 17 years ago, but it's new to me.
But Pete's right. This was a return to form for Supermassive. I loved the story. I loved the cast of characters. It's just they're phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal game, and I really want them to make more of these and less of the Dark Anthology series.
Yeah.
'Cause those games just are not as good.
Just like
Or
let
just
it
have more
end.
time between them, right? I'd be fine with one every other year rather than one every year. I don't need one every single year. But this was a good length, right? We played it over 2 days. It was like 3 hours each time that we played through. It was like a 5-6 hour game. It was pretty decent. I had a great time, and we did the couch co-op thing where you have like you both control different amount of characters. You just randomize it at the beginning. You say how many people are playing, and you all control a set selection of characters, and you kind of pass the controller around. Or I think if you've got multiple controllers, you can hook them up. Worked really well. I kept getting annoyed at my dad for some of the decisions he made. Some of the decisions were good decisions, and I would have made a different decision. Something bad would have happened because of the decision I made, and he was like, "See, I told you so." But
That's
some
the
of the
fun of
decisions
playing
were
them with other
terrible.
people, right? Is like when they like mess up and get a character killed, and you're just like, "What? Oh my god! Like, what did you?
Yeah,
what
when
did
it's
you
my
do?"
character that he gets killed, it's even worse, right? Because
Yeah.
like sometimes there'll be two characters on the screen, and one you're controlling, and one is just there as like in an NPC capacity.
Yeah.
And you can get them killed. You can get the other one killed at the same time as you getting your character killed. So then there's like multiple people knocked off the list. But yeah, really, really fun story. So much replayability. I really want to play through it again, and I want to try and get everyone killed, and I also want to try and have like a perfect run through where everyone
Yeah,
gets
same.
saved and nothing bad happens. And there's just so many different ways you could play it, so many different routes, so many different avenues, so many different choices that you make that because as you play the game, like, do I give this character the gun, or do I keep the gun for myself? And some of those decisions really make a difference in how the game pans out.
For sure. All
Now
right.
I feel like I know your top two as well, by the way.
Yes, you do.
I think if you've been paying attention the last couple weeks or months, I think all of our top two should be pretty obvious at this point. My number 2 game is Marvel Snap. We talked about it a lot, so I won't say too much about it, but I started playing it literally as soon as it was out of early access. Like I applied to get into the beta, and I never got a code. But I was interested in it from the jump, and I remember downloading it, I think the day it came out or the day after it came out for general release, and was like, yeah, let me kick the tires on this, right? Let me just jump in and see what this is about. I'm sure I'll play it for a couple minutes, and that'll be that. And it's got its hooks deep in me ever since then. I play it literally every single day, at least enough to get my dailies completed. but often much longer than that. It's become, I've talked a lot about how I was playing a lot of Magic the Gathering Arena in the last year or two, and this came along at the perfect time because the deck that I was using in Arena got cycled out of Standard, so I couldn't use it in Ranked anymore, and I didn't feel like building a new deck, so I was like, I'll take a break from Magic, and then this came out, and now I don't know that I'll ever go back, because I as much as I love Magic the Gathering,
Why would you need to?
I'm so obsessed with this game, and I would rather just play Magic in person with my real life friends, and that'll be how I play Magic, because this is just such a perfect experience for mobile. Like we said earlier, it's a very easy game to jump in while you're waiting in line somewhere and bang one out real quick, or to sit and play for a couple hours when you really want to get into something, that's multiplayer focused, but isn't necessarily a high-speed action game or a first-person shooter or something like that. And yeah, I love it. I love playing it. I love strategizing. I love building new decks. I love climbing the ladder. It's a fantastic game, and I'm really surprised how high quality it is, because I figured it would be, fun or enjoyable, but I think it's really an innovative and extremely well-designed card game, TCG, which is something that I've always really enjoyed, since I was a kid. So finding a new one that, does something that is not just, here's our version of Magic, right? Which is basically every other card game. It's you got life points and you have land or mana and you play cards and you attack each other and whoever runs out of life points first wins. It's that's how almost every card game works. And the fact that that's just not what this is, it feels like a breath of fresh air for the genre, and every match feels different, even if you use the same deck. And I love that. It's got some of the best replayability I think I've ever seen.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Fantastic game. Play it.
I think everyone should definitely have a good go on this. Me, isn't it? Right, hang on. What am I even looking? My number 2 is God of War Ragnarok, which I know is going to disappoint you, Pete, because it's probably put a little a dent in your plan for what our game of the year should be. But
yeah, no, it's fine. We're going to pick the wrong game like everybody else.
We've spoke about this game.
I've got something to say on that, Pete. Don't worry, I've got something to say.
We've spent enough time talking about this game that I don't have to do too much of it. But this game is just a fantastic sequel to what I thought was already a 10 out of 10 game. There was the only reason I wouldn't give this a 10, wouldn't have put this at the top of my list, and also wouldn't give it a 10. There were some pacing issues, and it didn't do enough different for me to be like, wow, this is such a unique feeling experience. It was more God of War, which was great, and it was incredibly high quality, and the story was great, and it made me cry, and all of the characters were so well acted and so well written this time around, as well as the first time around. It looked incredible. It didn't drop a frame. It's one of those games that every time I look at it, and I've played it in 4K, I've played it in 120 hertz, I've played it in 1080p, I've played it in all sorts of different ways, and I don't really understand how this game runs as well as it does on a PlayStation 5. Same with the first God of War. I played it on PS5 in the PS4 mode, because just after I got the Platinum, they announced the PS5 mode for it, and I don't know how they got this game running on the hardware it is. It's very impressive. Santa Monica are masters of their craft. All of the side content was great. All of the only issue I have is that there were some times where I was the story was we have to do this urgent thing, and I was like, oh yeah, cool, all right, let's go do this urgent thing. And then it would go, here's a large open world, and Kratos would be like, well, maybe we shouldn't go and deal with this imminent situation with someone maybe possibly in mortal danger. Maybe instead we should roam around a big new area and look around for a bit. And I feel like that for me, I was just at points I was just like, well, I don't want to not do this content, but also I want to, I also don't want to miss anything. I also want to sort of push on and see what's going on.
I don't know. I think that's a fair criticism, because it doesn't make you do those things, and there's no missable content.
No, I know, but it is just was odd to me at times where it was just we must go, and you start to go, and then you just introduce this whole thing. But then also like you're in this small area, and then that keeps growing, and then you're like, okay, well, there's more things to see and more things to do. Whereas what it should have done is sent me on that way, because you then just turn around and come back anyway. So why would I not just go and do the most urgent thing when we know there's it's not as imminent? Then we can come back. But still, I there was also a bit towards the end of the game where I was like quite near the end of the game, and I was like, cool, we're sort of pushing towards the final. We're sort of in the final act. Here we go. I'll just do this quick side quest, and that quick side quest unlocks like 3 new areas. All 3 of those areas had optional content in them, and it just kept growing and growing. And I was like,
man's complaining about content. He's like,
No.
I'm upset
I
about
think
this
it was
game for
oddly-
having too much quality content.
it was just oddly paced in a way. But yeah, the combat was excellent. I mean, there's not much more I can. I got the platinum for it. And I was like, it was 2 a.m. Finally got that platinum. I sort of saw the credits roll, because you have to do something else to get the credits to roll, and I was like just bawling at this last bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a very special game, and one that we're probably not going to see something from Santa Monica for 4 years, 5 years now. I'm interested in what that will be, but yeah, that's my number 2.
Steve?
My number 2 is Vampire Survivors, which
Coward.
no surprises,
Coward.
is one of my I think all-time favorite games at this point. I got hooked, absolutely hooked on this game. I think I've played like 50 hours of this game. It's a ridiculous amount of this game.
You
It's so
100%ed it,
fun.
right?
I did, and then they made a DLC that I bought, so now I've not 100%ed it anymore. So I have to do that. And they put an apology out on Twitter to everyone that got 100%. They were like, "Sorry, you can try again."
That's funny.
So yeah, I love this game. You know me. I never 100% games, and this was one that I was just compelled to do so. And finding all the secrets, finding all of the secret characters, finding all of the ways to do things, and so much fun. You feel like an absolute hero. Still not found those vampires. Don't know what coffin they're in. Every coffin I've looked in,
Yeah.
they're not there.
Maybe that'll be the final update. Will be here's
Here's
some
actually a vampire.
vampires.
It's a vampire, but
Kill
yeah,
Dracula.
I've spoken about this game till I'm long in the tooth. It's phenomenal, and for the price, everyone should go and buy this game and try it.
This one was on my
And it's on
honorable
Game
mentions
Pass.
list. I didn't end up ranking it. I liked it a lot. I enjoyed my time with it. I've played a lot of it as well, and it is a great TV game. And I think it definitely like finally clicked for me, and I'm like, okay, like I see the appeal here. But I think for me, like, it's still just too shallow of an experience for me to feel like it was something that was better than the 10 games I picked, because like I really enjoy it, but I think of it as a very, very, very well, and I don't mean shallow in like a negative sense in terms of like the design or anything like that. It's more just like what the game is simple, and that is its magic, right? And like I don't mean that as a detractor as much as just like it didn't leave the biggest impression on me in that way. I see why it's a phenomenon for sure. But it feels to me almost akin to like, I don't know, like saying something like, I don't like Tetris or something like that, right? Would be like game of the year. And it's like, yeah, I would say that about certain puzzle games, but just, I don't know, all these other games had things that, really struck a chord with me. And it was hard to rank what I feel like is a really, really good time waster above those games,
Yeah, that's fair. What
Okay,
else is
that's
on your
fine.
honorable mentions while we're going through them then?
Yeah, we'll hit honorable mentions real quick. So for mine, we already talked about the other ones, but I'll just say them again. Vampire Survivors, Roller Drome, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3 were all on my honorable mentions list. Also wanted to give a shout out to Weird West. It's a game I talked about a little bit. It's a kind of like top-down, like OG Fallout, Wasteland style RPG. And it's like very, it's like that that classic CRPG type game where it's, you run around, you role play a character, you make decisions, you can kill every plot important character that you encounter, you can be a hero, you can be a scoundrel.
I believe the term is now called immersive sim.
Yeah, I guess it is an immersive sim. You're right. And it's really good. I just didn't have enough time with it. Like, I started it right before my honeymoon, and when I came back, it was God of War time. So this is one I really want to double back to and get to it. It's on Game Pass. So check it out if it sounds interesting to you. I think it's really cool, and like the setting of it being like the Old West, but like there's a lot of like, dark magic and, demons and werewolves and monsters and, eldritch horrors and things like that. It's really cool, really cool. And the studio shares lineage with one of my favorite developers, Arcane. It's one of the minds behind Dishonored started this studio. So
I picked it up for about £6 in the sale in Steam, and it's been on Steam rather, and it's been in my backlog for a little while now, and I keep meaning to get to it.
Did not even know it was that cheap, because now it's back up to £31. So I would have probably picked it up for that price.
It's a good game. It's something special. And then a game that I want to give a slight shout out. I'm still not sure like how like where I'm at with it, but I started playing High on Life over the break, and I think there are things about it that are very interesting. Like it's very different, right, than what most other big attention releases are, right? It has a very unique voice, and it's certainly something that won't work for everybody. It doesn't always work for me, but I'm weirdly compelled by it, and I kind of want to see it through and figure out where I land on it. But it's definitely interesting, and I think if you're at all somebody that's interested in Justin Roiland's work, right? He's the co-creator of Rick and Morty and whatever, right? Like if that at all is something that speaks to you, you should probably like check it out and see if it strikes a chord with you. Yeah, it's I think worth checking out.
I've got a couple of not necessarily honorable mentions, because these aren't games that I have played and finished that didn't make the list. These are my games that I wanted to keep playing more of this year, that came out this year but didn't really get around to have much of a chance to, right? So sort of honorable mentions in a way. Splatoon 3, I kind of wish I gave that some more time, but I also just feel like, well, I think we said this yesterday, that it was just sort of more Splatoon. Wasn't iterative enough for us, but I enjoy Splatoon, and I enjoyed what I did play of it. My other one is Overwatch 2.
Nice, yeah.
Where I was very excited to play Overwatch 2, and I started playing it to write guides for, and then just sort of like dropped off of it eventually. Just because I realised that as the seasons were progressing, I was sort of like wasn't getting all the new characters, and I was like, well, this isn't what I liked about Overwatch. I liked being able to just go on and pick it up and stuff like that.
I'm surprised by how much it feels like that game was just a failure.
It was very successful. Like, the launch was bad. I almost said peak, but you wouldn't know what that means. The launch wasn't great, and then but it did have like it hit like 30 million players quite quickly. I just don't hear much about it anymore. I think
like I feel like it came and went, like
yeah.
And that's not to say that people aren't out there playing it, but like the original Overwatch was such a moment, right? Like it was game of the year. Like it captured our attention in a way that it feels like Overwatch 2 just really fumbled the bag a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And my third one, the one that I kept saying, the only game all year that I kept going, I should really play more of that, was V Rising, which is a game I don't even know if you guys would have heard of, but it was a PC survival game that came out at the start of the year, multiplayer survival game where you build a base, you are a vampire, and you
I remember this.
You're on sort of a server, you build a little base, and you have to go and kill bosses to get their powers to then explore further out and stuff like this. But because it was a survival game, it was sort of like Rust in that in your base, people could come and like blow it up and take all your stuff, and you had to keep it going and stuff like that. And the reason I didn't keep going back to it is every time I did go back to it, I was like, cool, we've got to start from scratch again. And then I would sort of quickly drop off again. But me and my friend Bumble and our friend Chloe, we played quite a bit of that, had a few bases, and that was good. Again, one that came out this year, was massive for a little while, huge. and then sort of dropped off. So yeah, that's a third. My three honourable mentions. Steve, do you have any honourable mentions before we get to number ones?
Yeah, I've got 10. Horizon Forbidden West, Pentiment, Aperture Desk Job, because a new Portal game came out
That
this
was
year, and I
good,
think that
yeah.
deserves a shout out. Power Wash Simulator, which I think was the best simulator game that came out this year. The Resident Evil Village DLC, because I finally am playing Resident Evil Village because it's in third-person mode,
Mhm.
and I love that. Citizen Sleeper, which I think is the closest thing to a Disco Elysium we've had since Disco Elysium. Garden of the Sea was my favorite VR game that came out this year. Really good. Bear and Breakfast didn't quite make my list, but a really good management sim with a great art style. I really like it. Stray, not one of us mentioned Stray. I think that deserves at least some kind of shout out because visually
I
very
enjoyed it a lot.
impressive from a new studio. It's a good game, and cats are awesome. The Fears to Fathom series, which I discovered this year, there was two games that came out in 2022. The new one comes out on January 15th. It's one developer who gets stories, horror stories from Reddit, real life horror stories, and he turns them into little video game experiences. Really good. Kirby and Fall Guys, because Fall Guys got a relaunch, and I got into it for the first time.
Well, guys, this is a lot of fun. So before we jump into our actual number ones, why don't we go around and do our new to me but not from this year? You know, the one that Pete was saying. Do you want to go with
we'll do
that
that.
before we get to our final one? Go on, Pete. What
Let's
was
do that
yours?
too. And then I think also, I don't know if you guys have this, but I also have like my data overall that I thought was pretty interesting. So I played 45 games this year. 25 were new games that released in 2022. 20 were previously released games. I beat or completed 22 games overall. 11 were new, 11 were old. And then I had a list of 21 games that I seriously wanted to play but didn't. And that includes games I cut games that I was interested in that I'm no longer interested in. Like, unfortunately, Sports Story is like a game I'm just not even going to try anymore.
Yeah, it's really sad, isn't it?
Really a bummer. So yeah, I played a lot of games this year. My goal for next year, I want to break 50. So for my game that was new to me in 2022, this is a game I beat right near the beginning of the year during one of the earlier lulls, and it's Unpacking. Unpacking is a really delightful game. I think it's great pixel art style, very cozy. And I think for me, what really made it stand out among other, similar style games is I just really like the way that it tells a story environmentally, but not through traditional environmental storytelling, right? I feel like a lot of times in games, it's like, it's about like discovering things in the world and like finding these stories that are like shown but not necessarily spoken, and like that's a huge part of like Elden Ring, right? Is like the story that the environment tells you rather than like dialogue or cutscenes or whatever. And Unpacking does that through how you follow, like if you're not aware, right? You follow basically this woman's life from when she's a young girl to a young adult, and it's like all these different phases that she goes through the different moves she makes, and like you see like certain items, right? Like her like childhood stuffed animal like is in the first room and the last room, and like she goes off to college and like downsizes on some things, and like you see the handhelds come through time.
Boyfriend.
She moves in with a boyfriend, and then they break up, and like things like that. And like you never learn this character's name, you never see her, you never see a single person, but you learn about.
You don't even you never go on holiday with her either, but you know everywhere she's been because the souvenirs show up in all the different places. Like she's been to Paris, she's been to Rome. Like it's really cool. I love it. And that there was one moment that really hit home where where I was like, where does this picture go? And it doesn't go up on the wall because she tucked it away in a drawer because she didn't want to see it anymore.
Yep.
And she'd like hid that picture away, and you had to figure out where it went. And it was just like really hit home. That was just like, oh shit. That was like a chapter of her life that's closed now. She doesn't really want to remember it. So she's like hidden it away. I really think that should have won like awards for best narrative last year. It was on my game of the year list last year. I loved Unpacking.
Yeah, it's a special game.
I really like the art style of it as well. I didn't realize it's awful. I thought it was sort of like one of those click sim, you're just doing things. I didn't realize there was anything more to it, so I might actually check that one out.
It elevates that type of genre, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, let's stats. I know I beat 39 games this year. I've played more than that because there are games that I didn't finish or games that are ongoing, or I played a bit of Fortnite, I played a bit of Minecraft, but I started and then finished 39 games this year. Of those games, only 9 of them were from this year. So games like Marvel Snap, for example, that are in my final list, I wouldn't say that's completed, but I am playing it. But my honourable mentions, not honourable mentions, sorry, my game from oh god, my game that's new to me that's not from this year. Sorry, I actually was struggling to choose between 3, and they're all from different generations, which is interesting. So I'm going to say them all just because they are all from different generations. So we go back in the Wii generation, Mario Galaxy. Because I've never played that game before, and I always meant to, but I picked it up for the first time this year on the Switch, and I was playing through it, and it's just incredible. It was, by the time I got to the end of it, and I did 100% it as I always do, I was like, this is incredible, as good as Mario Odyssey was. The fact that they included like that on the same package as like Sunshine and 64, which to me now do not hold up at all, and are both just
The
barely
fact that you
playable.
cannot play Mario Galaxy 2 is the real tragedy there.
I
Like
agree.
those
I
games
agree.
become hand in hand. Like they should have been a
Yeah.
package together.
It's a
The
shame.
fact that game is on the Wii U as well. Mario Galaxy 2 is on the Wii U. You could download it on the Wii U for like a tenner, and I did, but I never played it. It is a big shame. From last generation, I played Crosscode for the first time this year and loved it. And I bought the DLC and I played through that. And that, again, I
Nice.
adored that game. That, in terms of new games, is like second place. And then for me, from this generation, this most recent generation, I played Resident Evil Village this year for the first time, similar to you, Steve, and I loved it.
There you go.
So
Yeah, I'm having a
those
good
are my-
time with Village. It's a really
Yeah,
good game. Really good game.
But what's interesting is I played it in first person, you played it in third person, so we are having different
Yes.
experiences.
Yeah, and I can tell you, it's not scary in third person.
Oh, I
Nowhere
bet.
near. The like jump scares do not hit anywhere near because you see they're going to happen because
Yeah.
you're not there in like a little box.
All
My my stats, I played 24 games that came out this year. I don't know how many games that didn't come out this year because I didn't count those at all. And I don't know how many I beat because I just don't really beat games. So yeah, and I'm fine with that. I'm
You
fine with
beat
that. Just play
at
what
least
play
one
what you
game this
enjoy.
year. I know that.
Yes, I have beat at least one game. I've beat a few games this year. My bonus is a game that I've spoken about many times, which is 5 Dates, one of my favorite games I played this year. Great FMV game. It's a game set during the COVID lockdown, and you go on video dates. And the sequel, 10 Dates, is coming out on Valentine's Day, and I'm very excited to play it.
All right, so let's do it. Number 1, game of the year, gang. My number 1 should come as no surprise. It is, of course, God of War Ragnarok. I think this game is exceptional. I think it is arguably the best script in any video game. I think it is incredibly well written, and I think that is more often than not, it comes down to moments, small moments, and dialogue and acting and things that I wouldn't often point to as what makes a video game story special, right? Like video games for me are, at their best when they're really trying to leverage the idea that it's an interactive medium, right? I talked about how many of the other games on my list are games that I liked because they allowed me to make choices and feel like I had agency. This is very much not that, right? God of War Ragnarok is a linear story. And I think the fact that it is that and that I would rank it so highly speaks to how good it is. The opening of the game made me cry. There are 2 or 3 moments in the heat of the story that made me cry. The ending made me cry twice. I think it's profoundly special. And I think the way that Sony Santa Monica took Kratos, who is this character who, for most of his existence has been a poster boy for like toxic masculinity in the early 2000s video game industry, and was famous for being this hyper masculine, hyper violent, guy who has like this totally emotionally detached sex in these mini games, and and it was like all about spectacle and bloodshed, right? And like to decide that it was time to reinvent that character, and rather than to like throw it out and start over, to like build on that, and then to have this game build on that foundation in ways that I didn't think were possible. It's a masterclass, and I think, yeah, like the overall arcing story is compelling, right? The events of Ragnarok and how it all plays out is compelling. But I think what's really the best about it is the small character moments, right? And what the characters mean to each other, and how the relationships that they have that you built firsthand through your adventure with them in 2018, and then the ways in which it grew while you were away, right? They leverage that so well, right? And so many of the biggest moments in the story come down to allowing a moment to breathe and trusting that you, the listener, will be, or the player will be emotionally invested enough for it to mean something to you. And it's so expertly done. And I think the things that it has to say about, fatherhood or parenthood in general, right? The relationships that we have with our parents, and that parents have with their children, letting go, like learning about how to process grief in a healthy way, and how what it has to say about love and grief, and how loss can be beautiful, and that it's just I could really sit here and talk about it for hours, right? I think it's so thematically strong, and then on top of that, right? Like as Max said, it has really strong gameplay. I think Sony Santa Monica does like unique, iconic weaponry better than anybody else. Like there are multiple distinct fighting styles in this game tied to these signature iconic weapons that feel totally different, that widen the gameplay in a really meaningful way, that impact the way that you explore the world and deal with side content, which is like the side missions are literally just as well thought out and fleshed out and emotional as the main content. There's never a bullshit like checkbox, go collect a bunch of skins and tournament. Like it's just not that kind of game. And the fact that it looks for every opportunity to give you, a meaningful emotional beat, a funny interaction with a character, a cool Easter egg, like the post game. There's so many things that unlock after the game is over that like you might not even see if you don't take the time to explore and really like live in the world and get lost in it, And I just think I think it's an achievement for sure, because like Max said, I would agree that 2018 was a game that I would probably give a 10 out of 10. And I think that this game is better than it in every way. Granted, it does have the sequel issue where it wouldn't be as impactful without the first one. So like it's standing on the shoulders of giants. So to some people, I think that might lessen its achievement. But to me, I actually think it makes it more impressive, because I think you only need to look at Horizon Forbidden West for a game that can be in almost every way technically a better sequel and still not hit as hard for some people. And I think that if you think that this game doesn't hit as hard as the first one, I don't understand that. That's an opinion I just could not fathom. So yeah, I have to give it all its flowers. I think it was the best game this year by a country mile, and I don't think it's close.
Do you agree with that, Max? Do you think that that nothing comes close?
I think we might have some disagreements there, unfortunately.
Max, I would love if you would just turn your face. Turn your face, Max.
I know. I'm sorry.
You say you know, but you come on.
We gotta buy this man a new microphone this year that has like monitoring in it, so that he knows.
I swear to God, no. He needs like a hand mic. Like he needs to hold it like he's a hardcore singer and just like have it up in front of him all the time.
I'm going for this position where it's impossible for me to not.
Look at this guy. He's trying to like lay down here. Come on.
Well, because this way I can't look at you and not speak into the mic this way.
There you go.
That's good. That's good.
So that's my new technique. So my game of the year, and I'm sure you'll be able to um, have guessed it anyway, all of you, obviously.
Did I guess right? Because I put it on the list already.
Marvel Snap.
It's Elden Ring. Yeah, my number one game of the year is Elden Ring, and as someone who is a big fan of all the From Software games, I've played them all, I beat them all. I've uh, this is the game this year that I think, not just because it was so good, sort of demanded a lot of my time, but also because it gave me a feeling a game hasn't given me since Breath of the Wild, which is where me and a bunch of people are all playing at the same time, and you go, "Did you see that thing there?" And they go,
Yeah.
"No, I didn't get there yet." And you're like, "Well, you got to go there, man, because you could go anywhere and do anything, and it was very free form." And there are friends of mine who have never played the same games as me. We've always missed each other, and I've always recommended, oh, you should play the Souls games, you should play Bloodborne, you should play Sekiro. And for a lot of them, this is the first one they picked up, and all of us were playing this game. All of us talking about this game. All of us were in the co-op together, jumping around. All of us were just having Pete can't handle it. He's gone. All of us were having just the best time playing this amazing game that wasn't like I was struggling to, because like a lot of their games, they like playing Skyrim. There's caveats where I hate the combat, I hate being in that world, I hate the dialogue and stuff. It was everything I loved about the FromSoft games, just in a package that people already like, and that's why it was as successful as it was, because it was essentially the Skyrim, or the open world RPG format that people love, just with the sort of the soul stuff that people have maybe found too difficult before. But this did
Yeah,
a great job of making it
I
easier
don't,
to play.
I don't know what it was for me that made me connect with this game, because this is also my number one. This is
Welcome
my
to the
my
correct.
pick of the best game of the year. I think for me though, like I don't agree with Pete that God of War Ragnarok beats it out by a country mile. Like I don't think he gave it enough time, and I can say this because he's
I
not
agree.
here. Um,
I mean,
this
I've
game
seen
is
him play it on stream, and even then, I was like, he's not
yeah.
putting his all
He
into
didn't
it.
even finish. He didn't even beat Godric.
Yeah, right.
So like
Which
that for me was the turning point of when it clicked, and I was like, oh shit, I get this. And like it's really special, and it's like a rhythm. It's like I get in the rhythm of this, like, and don't get greedy. I gotta wait for my turn to get my hit in and figure out my
Mhm.
strategy and how I want to play and everything. So there's so many different ways to play. Like you can play with magic, you can play with faith, you can play with strength. Like there's so many different ways you can play dexterity. And the as much as the story I don't think is presented in a way that I find as compelling as something like say God of War, I do think there is a really cool story in there, and I enjoyed discovering it. I enjoyed some of the story arcs. I like the Rani story quest, for example. And I think the boss design is second to none for me in games I've played. Like I really think that the bosses you beat and the different stages that they have, every single one's unique, every single one's creative, and every single one has a reason why they're doing it and why they are the way they are.
I think taking something where the FromSoft games, where they already have that sort of like deep lore, where a lot of it is just sort of hidden in the background, it's all environmental storytelling. You're supposed to read the objects and piece it together yourself. This one, I think, more than any of the others, leans into that and creates like a family tree of characters. You've got all of you've got the sort of the gods at the top who then gave birth to all the demigods who are some of the bosses, who then also have their own children who, you know, run things, and like you can sort of track it in this game. And you can go to the different schools and you can see the different schools of magic, instead of just hearing about them. Like in Bloodborne, there's a lot of like you hear about these different schools and things like that. Here you visit them, you see them, you see the schism between them, where there's one that's sort of up on the castle that's doing one thing, then you have the ones that are like down in the swamp, um and I think that it has
Like
just one of
areas you
these.
can't get to until certain story beats happen, like when the like meteor hits the
Mhm,
earth, and then you
mhm.
can get down into this, like, is it Nocturne or something? It's like an underground
Yeah, I
city.
can't remember
It's
what it's
just like,
called, yeah.
and there's
But
so much cool shit going on down there as well. And like that's where I think that's where you find the mimic.
Yes,
And
it
I
is.
was
Yeah,
picking
quite
that
late
up. I
into
was like,
that.
oh shit. I was like, fuck, this guy's me. This guy looks like me. And I was like, oh, it is me. And he's got all
Yeah,
the same
yeah.
skills as me. And this is like OP as shit. Like this is so cool.
And then being able to abuse that, like I had like and also what I liked about this game is that at no point did I feel like I was, oh no, I've accidentally skilled myself in here. I'm in a corner now. I have to play in this one way. I could, at one point I had all of my stuff in strength and I was wielding the big pizza cutter and I was just holding LT to win. You go "Rrrm," and you just inflict bleed, 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 and you kill things. And then that didn't really work for me. So I ended up like reskilling into some magic, or I reskilled into this, and there was a lot. There's just so much freedom, and I feel like this is one of the most freeform games I've ever played that isn't hindered by its gameplay. Like when Steve was saying earlier, when Pete was saying earlier about games that let you decide the narrative, or games that let you pick and choose whatever you want, and sort of do anything you want, like immersive sims. A lot of them I feel like are quite stunted in the fact that you really, while you have the idea of you have the choice you can make, you really are just sort of achieving the same thing. You just have slightly different things, or
There's
you're
there's so
having
many
to
different
think through
endings
the
to this,
story.
right?
Not in that way. I mean, in terms of like, so when I played Prey, for example, this year, there are a lot of options, but they all very much felt the same. I was still either shooting or, sneaking and
Yeah.
things like that. Whereas this, the variety of builds is unlike anything I've ever seen. The fact that I could, you can go full magic, or you can lean fully into bleed, or you can go all poison, or you can do what I did, where I had by the end of the game, after sort of completing
Dual
it,
katanas or something, right?
that
You
yeah,
and
again, yeah,
you
you
both went over there, yeah.
I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I did that with my second character, but this is after I'd already beaten the game twice. So after when I sort of got to the end of my second playthrough, I was like, all right, I've got enough levels here that I can try and sort of come up with something good. And I was able to create a build that was sword and shield, but I could swap my sword to my one spells, shield to my other spells, and then I just had all of my spells on. So I was so versatile that I could do anything I wanted. Then did PvP with a friend of mine who was just running like something he'd come up with, and we were sort of matched. And I was a whole game apart from him. I played the game again, but he had come up with something, and another friend of mine was just like power stancing, which is where you have two of the same weapon, power stancing, the dual blades. Like it's a game that I very much look forward to picking up again and playing in a different way, um, because it has that endless replayability, and the fact that I played it 2.5 times in
I
the
kind of
space of
want to
like a month.
restart it before I've even finished it, Max. Like Zayd very like generously gifted me a copy on Steam,
Oh wow!
and I just want to start again. Now I know what type of player I am. I picked
Mhm,
the fucking bandit as my starting character, and then I like found out that I wanted to play magic dexterity, and
mhm.
like it did not work. It because like I could reconfigure it only so much, even when you go see like see that like thing at the castle or whatever, like you can only reconfigure it so much back to your base configuration. So yeah, it just didn't work. But for me, like the fact that I got into a Souls game at all, the fact that I had such like a 180 on this game, like we did an episode of the podcast where I like hated on it, and I was like, I just don't get it. I do not understand this
I
game. And people
remember.
was like, yeah, I never get Souls games either. And then like the next one, I was just like, I fucking love this game. It's amazing. It's like insane. It's like
I
it's nothing
remember.
like nothing I've ever played before.
I remember listening to that one episode and thinking, ridiculous. Why is Steve? I trusted Steve so much, and then I had like an hour and a half drive, so I sort of got one of the ways, got in the car and put the next episode on the way home, and the whole way home I was like, when I get home, I'm gonna message Steve, I'm gonna have a go, and then like, and I, and then on the way home, I played the next episode. I'm like, oh yeah, no, right, good, Steve got it. He tried his hardest, and he finally got it. So yeah, for me, yeah,
I also tried my hardest. I had
You
not.
did not. You did not
I
even beat Godric. We spoke about this while you were off. We do not think you gave this game a good enough try. Like I still don't. I still think that you should try it again at some point because it's a special game, Pete. There's a reason this won so many Game of the Year awards.
I'm open to trying it again. Um, I don't know, man. Like
here's my idea. Steve, share your Steam library with Pete. Pete, try it on Steam Deck. See if that, being in handheld, similar to the Switch, works for you. Um, Maybe even do it.
He could literally just stream from his Xbox to his Steam Deck. Like, I've even done that. Like,
Okay, that's
there's
fine.
ways. I just don't think he'll play it and engage with it. But like, I got such a sense of euphoria whenever I beat a boss in this game, and like it's something I will never get. It's like a drug. It's like, oh shit. I defeat that stupid giant on the tiny little horse, and I finally fucking got him. And that was before they nerfed him. And I was just like, oh yes, I'm a fucking hero.
I want to get it so bad, right? Like it's certainly like a thing where like I'm like I see this experience that people are having with it, and I hear the way that they talk about it, and I'm just like, yeah, man, like I want to be in on it. Like I want to have that connection to it. And I just don't. I think there's so much friction between me and like it as a piece, you know, like there's so much about it that is at odds with what I want. And I know it's an acquired taste, so maybe it is that I just need to power through and get further and hit a point where it clicks for me. Because it certainly happens, right? There's plenty of games that I start and don't get into and then start again, and it, you know, that time around it makes more sense, but. I started The Last of Us like 3 times before I played it, right? But I don't know, man. I don't see what y'all see. And some of the stuff that I hear you guys talk about, and it's like, oh, it's so like I've heard so many people I respect be like, it revolutionized open world games in the way that Breath of the Wild did, and every game after this is gonna. And I don't. Not one of you has been able to articulate that in a way where I'm like, I see what is unique about it, right? Like, it's like, it just seems like a lot of other video games, you know? And
I mean, I don't think it necessarily is unique. I just think it does all of the things that those video games
and it's just exceptional.
Very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it does all the stuff that I loved about Breath of the Wild, you know? But even, and then in some ways it does it better because the dungeons feel more fleshed out. It feels like there are.
Yeah, but that I think is what is revolutionary. It's like it took the Breath of the Wild, it's taken all of these components and stuck them all together that no games ever done before.
Why does it
I think the revolutionary thing is the sense of exploration you get. The fact that there is no pointers, there's no compass on the screen showing you where to go at any given time. The fact that you have to use landmarks and reference points around the world to figure out where it is. And you'll see someone and he'll be like, oh yeah, she's up the hill, you know, like go see her, go find her, and then bring it back to me. And you can put markers on the map and like figure out where they are. Yeah. But it's like that sense of exploration that you don't get, or I haven't got in any other video game other than Breath of the Wild is the only game that's come close to it for me.
I think I prefer Elden Ring to Breath of the Wild.
Me too.
For that reason, that it does a lot. All the things I liked about Breath of the Wild, it does those. Also, on top of that, incredible combat and like the variety of the combat and stuff like that. On top of that, the dungeons are dungeons. You know, they feel like they feel like there are these huge sprawling things that I can tackle any way I want. And you know, also I like that you can make it as hard as you want or as easy as you want, depending on what you choose to play. You know. Hey, what were you going to say earlier when you said I
just like. It's so funny because like there's so many of these things that I'm just like, I hate that. Like I don't like the like. I think one of the things that bugs me so much about this game is it's the same reason that I have struggled to get into The Witcher, where I'm like, there's so much about this that should speak to me, right? I like swords and sorcery. I like games that are about choosing stats and having that influence the way that you play. Like there's a lot here that should connect for me, but I fucking hate the way that it plays. Like I hate the controls. I just don't
understand why though.
Because it feels like driving a fucking boat. Fine. Like it's like that's
because you play someone with like a massive fucking two-handed sword and like heavy armor on. So it's like you're playing someone who feels like a boat because he is a fucking boat. He's like the size of a boat because he's heavy. Like if you played someone who was like light and nimble and in like leather armor and had like a dagger, you'd feel like nimble and light and you know moving around.
Yeah, and like maybe like, I need to try a different class. But again, like this is why I don't like this game. Like I think it's bullshit that the expectation on the player is, and I did this, Steve. I watched a 30-minute YouTube video before I started this stupid game.
I know.
to be like,
and I know that. And
what are
like,
the intricacies of the
didn't.
stats and how do they work? And oh, guess what? Actually, nobody knows how they work, so we're guessing that this is how they work based on how Dark Souls worked. And then now, 2 days later, we actually figured out how it works. It's like, dude, I don't want to do an hour of homework to figure out what character I want to play and then get 10 hours into the game and be like, oh, I don't like how it plays. Let me start over.
I get that because like I had that with the Bandit, right? I picked a class that I thought I was going to like and I didn't. And that's because I'm new to Souls games and I never played them before. If I'd never played a game that uses Dungeons and Dragons rules, I wouldn't know what type of character I want to be. I wouldn't know what
but the game would explain to you what they impact. Use. Right? Like
not massively. Like I wouldn't know like the intricacies of what they do and what each thing is. I don't think anyway.
All the classes do is determine the 3 stats that you start a little bit higher on and your starting gear, right?
Yeah.
I was able to so I started off with a sword and some magic, right? And then at one point in the game I was purely strength and I had heavy armor and I was sort of chomping around hitting things. And then another time I was like purely dexterity and I had like a dual thing and I was like ting ting ting. The you shouldn't have to spend half an hour looking at how you're going to start because you then have the complete freedom to play however you want to play. The only wrong way to play Elden Ring is to not play Elden Ring. Is what I think there because you can just like once you go, okay, I need more health, so I'll start getting more health. Or you go, oh, I found this spell that I'd like to try out. Okay, maybe I need some intelligence. Or oh, I found this weapon, but this weapon requires me to have this much strength. All right, cool. Let me.
Yeah, but I do think there is a bit of planning that you can do if you know Souls games and know what you like, right? Like you can know I'm going to be putting all my stats in Faith because I want to do that, or I'm going to put all my stats in Magic because I know that's the kind of build I'm going for. But that's where the replayability comes in, I think. Like Max, you said you replayed it twice. Like I think that's where you go, right? This time around, I'm going to go in. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to blitz through it all. And you don't have to do any of the side stuff. Like if that exploration thing sounds annoying to you and you don't want to like speak to this guy who tells you to go see a woman somewhere, you don't have to. You can just follow the trail that leads you through.
And it's like, I don't know. I think some of those things also put me at odds with it, right? Where I'm like, I don't need the game to draw me a line, right? But like, I do think it's kind of frustrating that like, I remember there was like that conversation around it where people are like, oh, you got to have a journal so you can like write stuff down. And it's just like, there's things like that where I'm like, I can absolutely understand why somebody would do this and be like, this is incredible. Like, this is so immersive and I love that it's asking this of me and blah, 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 blah. But it's like, I don't know, dude. Like, you
also don't need a journal. You can just go on the Elden Ring wiki if you struggle like these days. Like, everyone's done that homework for you. And they also did an update where they fixed the markers. Like, I think they should have been there at the beginning, but it does now show you where NPCs are on the map, which it didn't do at launch, and that was a big problem. I used to go around and I would put a marker wherever an NPC was, so I would remember, but it's there already now for you, so you don't have to worry about that.
And like, I don't know.
And you can also just kill all of the merchants and find them at the round table. So then it doesn't matter either. You can just give the fucking crystal thing over and
and like, I don't know. That could be it could be as simple as like maybe playing longer and like they made that update and those are things that would like be a little bit less, creating that friction for me. But like, there's so much of it where I'm like, oh, I don't like this initially. And then everyone's like, oh, you got to just play for 30 hours and just learn it. And it's like, I don't want to though. And I don't feel motivated to. And like when I was not playing it on stream, I was bored because I'm just like, okay, like I'm going to walk around and like.
It is all I thought about for months. I've played 80 hours of that game and I've still not finished it.
And you're like, I want to start it
back
again
and finish it. And I want to start it again. Like
I want that. I want to feel that so bad. I really do. And I don't know if spending more time with it is enough. I feel like there are just things about this that I just fundamentally am just not into. But I don't know. It's like maybe I need to go into it again with the learnings I had from my failed run. Maybe you need to
go try a different Souls game. Like you like Tsushima, so maybe go try Sekiro,
Maybe.
Try something else.
But it's like, I part of it too is like, I don't like the aesthetic of these games. Like, they're so drab and like.
Oh, they're ugly. Yeah.
And like, the world is so like. I don't know. It feels like so like.
It feels like a PS3 game.
Yeah, and it's like it feels like a PS3 game mixed with like the lyrics a 16-year-old would write for his like rip-off Metallica band. You know, like it's like very like okay.
I just slate railroads like that. Like,
the Lord of Fingers and the Maidens and the Fingers and yeah, okay, I don't know, man. Like I just struggle to connect with it, you know, and like not caring about the story or the world makes it hard for me to like want to explore it because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna meet some other depressing asshole who's gonna try to kill me or that'll say some shit I don't understand or I'm not interested in. And like that is so dismissive, and I know that, but it's like I can't tell you how crazy it's made me feel this year to like hear all this conversation, just be like, I just want to understand it. I just want to feel something about this game, and like the biggest feeling I got from it, I'm like, yeah, it's okay. And like that makes me more upset. I wish I hated it more.
That's fine. That's how I felt about Pokemon.
Yeah.
It's okay. Not every game is for you.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I just want it to be though. I want to like everything.
Yeah, I always want Pokemon to be because they make so many of them and everyone talks about them and we have like a Nintendo podcast where everyone expects you to like Pokemon and I just don't get them. So it's okay, Pete.
It's all right. So, all right, let's read our final list here, and we'll call it a day for what we'll.
That last one I left out because it's a 3-way tie, so we do have to make a decision.
I made that decision because the other tie, what's the 3
ties? Kirby, Pentiment, and Stacklands.
Oh, I didn't realize Kirby was in there too.
Yeah, and 2 people voted for Kirby, and it made.
And it was honorable
list,
mention, so it'll be Kirby. So it's Kirby.
So I kind of feel like it should be Kirby.
No, you're right. My thought, I didn't realize Kirby was in the mix. My thought for picking Pentiment there was because you had it in honorable mentions. It was on my
honorable mentions.
Yeah. Okay, so there we go. So final list. Number 10, Kirby and the Forgotten Land with 6 points. Number 9, Pokemon Legends Arceus with 9 points. Or I'm sorry, with 7 points. Number 8, Case of the Golden Idol with 7 points. Number 7, Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak with 8 points. Number 6, Horizon Forbidden West with 8 points. Number 5, The Quarry with 11 points. Number 4, Vampire Survivors with 15 points. Number 3, Marvel Snap, hell yeah, with 16 points. Number 2, God of War Ragnarok with a frustrating 19 points. To Elden Ring, our Game of the Year's 20 points.
Yeah, but I'm glad. I'm happy with the list. If I'd have put swap Vampire Survivors around, we'd have been arguing the toss over Ragnarok and Elden Ring for hours, I think. So I'm pretty happy with
that. Would have been hilarious.
Yeah, I know. I do want to say I want to do a bonus for the list, and it's the Steam Deck. I think it deserves a place on our Game of the Year list. It's not a game.
Okay.
But for me, it changed the way I play video games. Time gave Person of the Year to a fucking computer in the 80s. I feel like we could give Game of the Year and have it on our Game of the Year list. The Steam Deck
Steve?
for me changed a lot.
That's insane, but I like it. So you know what? Yeah, fair enough. In 11th place, we have the Steam Deck. All right, so quite a year for games, I'll say, everybody. I think 2021, maybe not the hottest year ever, but once I started really like looking back on it and breaking it down.
You mean 2022?
Yes, 2022, excuse me. I think it was a better year than I gave it credit for. I think it had some really, really special games, and I think when we look back on this generation, 2 of the games that will define this generation came out this year, and that's Elden Ring and God of War, right? Like, that's pretty cool. So, it's a good one. I think I'm happy with the list, too. I think it's...
If just the Steam Deck came out this year, I would have been happy.
Yeah,
like, that enough was like, it got me in playing PC games.
But I feel like you look at this list, it's a good mix genre-wise. It's a good mix platform-wise. It represents all of our tastes pretty well. I'm satisfied with it. I think it's a good one. So make sure you write in and let us know what your pick for Game of the Year 2022 was. And before next week's show, when we're going to look forward to 2023, let us know the games that you're looking forward to the most. What are the things in 2023 you're most excited to play, and or hope that will get announced, all that good stuff, right? Because we're going to have to look forward, talk about the stuff we're looking forward to, make our predictions, all that good stuff. So it's going to be nonstop 2023 talk for the next couple of weeks here. So I hope you are ready to pull out your crystal balls and prognosticate, everybody, because it's going to be a fun one. And your boy's out here to defend the trophy. It's happening.
Yeah, we've got some rules to change. People in the comments were not happy this year.
Hey, you know what? They all knew I was right, though. That's the thing, right? So, you want to talk about rules? Fine, we can adjust them. But I mean, hey, I play to win, and I'm gonna win no matter what the rules are. So do what you got to do. All right, do what you got to do.
I'm rooting for Max this year.
We all are.
He's the dark horse, right? He's never competed before. I feel like with you, Steve, if you win, it's a Cinderella story, right? It's the underdog coming back, David and Goliath. Everybody loves that. Max, though, right? Is he a ringer? Does he come out and really, is he gonna knock me down a peg? We'll see. I'm very excited to see.
All dark horse and handsome.
There you go. So make sure you write in for next week's show and get in your thoughts as well, because we want to hear from you. If you want to become a supporter, if you want to find our email address to write in, if you want to come join the Discord where the conversation keeps rolling when the week's over, if you want to go find our content all over the web, FlipScreen.games is our website. Head over there, and however you choose to show your support, we appreciate you coming and spending the time with us here today. Thank you for tuning in for the first and very most long episode we have ever done of the FlipScreen Games Podcast. It's going to be a good year. 2023 is the year of FlipScreen Games. You heard it here first. So, everybody, for the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Max. Wait, I always have to look at the monitor because you're on different sides. I've been Pete. He's been Max. He's been Steve. We've been the crew. We'll see you next week for another episode of FlipScreen Games Podcast, everybody. Take it easy. Happy New Year.